it's time to sit back and relax with your favorite drink. And listen. The Last Radio Call by Positive Tennis 6626. Chapter 1. Normal Day. 55 to dispatch. Show me 10-8 from that call. Put me on Highway 35 near mile marker 157 for radar, I said into my patrol car's radio. 10-4, 55. Have you cleared from the call and out at 35 for radar? The dispatcher replied in an always calm demeanor. I sat in the median running radar, with the speed locked to 10 over the posted limit. The constant low warble of the radar unit was just background noise to me at this point. I just opened up CAD, that's computer-aided dispatch, or as the general public like to call it, the laptop in the cop car. I just opened up the program to start my report, when my cell phone started to ring. The screen said, Erica. I answered. Hey babe, how you doing? That's good, I'm fine. I looked over at the clock. 16:21 hours, and my shift ended at 1700 hours. I have just over half an hour left pending any last-minute calls that come in. I love you two. Have fun on your girls' trip. Let me know when you get there. I'll miss you too, but don't worry, I'll be fine. I'm gonna see if I can pick up an extra shift this weekend. I gotta help pay for our wedding. It's only 3 months away. Okay, yeah, I've gotta finish up some paperwork. Love you too. Bye. I put the phone back in my pocket and started my report. On, date redacted, at approximately 16:10, I, Reserve Deputy Alex, badge number 55, got dispatched via radio to address redacted in District 2 for a report for a battery in process. When I arrived on the scene, Deputies Kirby, badge number 26, and Welch, badge number 9, had already arrived and had the suspect in custody and were waiting for a transport to the jail. I spoke to the victim, name redacted, who I later identified by his state driver's license. He informed me that he was just out for a jog when someone attacked him and bit him on the arm twice and leg once. The victim was able to get away and call 911. Sunburst Fire Department arrived to take him to Mercy Medical Hospital for treatment. See Form 5910-79 for full report. I just clicked on the report form after finishing my synopsis report when a call came over the radio. 5280, 5290, respond to 618 Chatterton. 618 Chatterton for a group of 5 fighting. Well, I laughed and thought, have fun with that, Sunburst PD. I always like to keep the radio in my squad car set to scan to listen for SBPD frequencies. I work for District 2 in the county of Bear Creek. The biggest city in my area is Sunburst, with a population of 91,170 and employs 153 police officers. There are other smaller towns in my district with no more than a few thousand people at most. Sunburst is surrounded by mountains on 3 sides and the Cook River a mile long on the 4th side. The main way in and out was over the Cook Bridge, or the Big C as we called it. That's why I normally write reports on Highway 35. If anyone was going to run from SBPD, this was the only way out of the city. I've got in the car with my spike strip on more than one occasion. My radar went from a low warble to a high-pitched ping. I looked up on the display screen, 90 miles an hour. I let out a soft "fuck" under my breath. I looked in the rearview mirror to see a Toyota Corolla flying up on me. I closed my laptop and put my squad in drive. With my foot on the brake and hand over the light bar control, I really didn't want to stop any car this close to the end of watch, but 90 in a 65 is something I can't just overlook. Toyota flew past me. I activated my emergency light, checked to make sure it was safe to pull out into the traffic, and floored it. The growl of the Crown Vic's V8 rumbled to life as I took off down the highway in pursuit of the speeder. As I sped away, I could hear my radio. Dispatch, this is 5290. Myself and 5280, 5 individuals at gunpoint. Send backup. The dispatcher replied with 10-4, 5270, 5260, 5250. Respond 1033 to 618 Chatterton. 618 Chatterton to back up 5280 and 90. All other officers stay off the air until I hear back from 5280. I just caught up with a speeding vehicle and pulled it over. Our dispatcher for the county is different than the city, so I was able to radio my information to dispatch. 55 to dispatch, I said. Go ahead, 55, replied the dispatcher. Dispatch, can you run a 28 on a Toyota Corolla? License plate Boy Victor Adam 279 BVA 279. Silver in color, occupied ×3. A few moments later, dispatch came back with 10-4. Vehicle's clean. Which means it's not stolen. The tags are current, and the owner of the vehicle is not wanted in connection with a crime. I walked up to the vehicle and pressed my thumb onto the taillight, so if anything were to happen to me, they could dust the car for prints and find I was there. I walked up to the driver door, but stopped short just behind the A-pillar of the car. You never want to get right up in front of the window. That makes it way too easy to be killed. The driver rolled down his window, and I did my introduction. Hi, I'm Deputy Alex with the Bear Creek County Sheriff Department. The reason for my traffic stop is that you were going 90 in a posted 65. Any reason why you were speeding today? Also, can I see your driver's license, registration, and proof of insurance? I always like to have the driver talk to me and look for stuff at the same time. If they're drunk or nervous, they typically can't do both at the same time. The driver said to me, Hey man, sorry, I didn't realize I was going that fast. There were 2 girls in the back seat of the car, maybe no older than 12 or 14. The blonde girl spoke up. Yes, you did, Daddy. You said if we don't get up to the cabin before sundown, Mommy was going to tear you a new one. Well, I was trying to keep the grin off my face at this. The driver said to me, Here's my driver's license, sir. I took his license and asked, Mr. Name redacted, is this your current address? Yeah, let me just give you my insurance card. The blonde girl started talking to me. Hi, officer. How are you? I kept one eye on her dad to make sure he wasn't reaching for something he shouldn't be. I turned to her and replied, Not too bad. How are you? How's school going? It's good. This is my friend Jessica, but she's sleeping right now. The girl next to her had jet black hair covering her face. Her head was wedged in between the door and the headrest, which is the most comfortable position one can get in a car. You staying out of trouble? I said in a joking manner. I'm trying to, but my dad says if I develop early like my mom, it'll be hard for me to stay out of trouble. I coughed, trying to hold back a laugh. I glanced at the dad, who was red in the face from embarrassment. Officer, I found my insurance card. I took it from him and walked back to my patrol car. 550 to dispatch. Can you run a 27 for me? 10-4. 55, go ahead with your 27. Dispatch responded. I was just about to read off the name on the driver's license when the emergency tone on my radio went off. I looked down at the small digital display on my patrol car's radio reading Channel 4 SBPD. It was flashing red. Someone must have hit the emergency button on their police radio. When pressed, it gives the officer who pressed the button 30 seconds of open mic time to say whatever they need to say with no interruption. What I heard next is something no officer ever wants to hear. Officer down. Officer down. Shots fired. 5280 is down. We got a mob coming after us. 2 additional people have been shot. I'm dragging 5280 down Chatterton Street. I need backup now. There were some noises coming through the radio. It sounded like dragging on pavement and then yelling. Stay back. 2 pistol shots rang out over the radio. Then there was silence for exactly 1 heartbeat. Dispatch came on with a calm voice, but it was traced with a hint of panic. Tackle alert, tackle alert, tackle alert. Officers need immediate assistance. 618 Chatterton. 618 Chatterton. Officers down. Shots fired. This is an all units respond. 1033 TAC alert. Unknown conditions of the officer. Unknown number of assailants. 618 Chatterton. TAC alert. TAC alert. TAC alert. I jumped out the door of my cruiser and ran up to the car. Okay, it's your lucky day, buddy. Here's your information. Threw it all in the front seat of his car. I have to go. Now, slow it down and drive safely. Jessica, the girl in the back, was awake now. Our eyes locked for only a few seconds. She had the prettiest emerald green eyes I think I've ever seen. I knew I'd never forget them. I stumbled for a second. "Hi, officer," she said. Well, that traffic stop will be the last normal thing that would ever happen to me. Jumped back into my police car, slammed it into drive, and pushed the gas pedal to the floorboard. This was an officer down, a brother in blue, and I was going to go balls to the wall to get there. I grabbed my radio and called dispatch. 55 to dispatch. Clear me for that traffic stop. Show me 1017 en route to that TAC alert at 618 Chatterton. I'm going off frequency. We'll be on mutual aid 1 if you need me. Before I got a response back from dispatch, I changed to mutual aid 1 on my police radio. I did all this while driving at 120 miles an hour. Took the closest off-ramp, crossed over the highway, and got back on the highway, this time driving towards the city of Sunburst. In my rearview mirror, I saw the lights of another police vehicle. I slowed down so we could travel together. The police SUV was a state police vehicle. I quickly switched to the state police frequency and pressed the push-to-talk button on the radio. "State Police on 35. This is Deputy Alex from BCSD. Are you responding to the TAC alert?" 10-4. "Do I need to take the lead?" asked the trooper. If you could. I'm not familiar enough with the area." 10-4. "Taking the lead now," replied the trooper. The trooper honked his air horn twice and passed me on the left. 10-4. "FYI, we're on mutual aid 1 frequency," I said before switching back over. 2 more squad cars fell in line behind us. One was a City of Bellevue police squad, which is a small city a few miles away from Sunburst. The other was a Bear Creek County deputy. Our convoy of 4 squad cars surged ahead with the emergency lights flashing and sirens wailing. We drove at approximately 100 to 120 miles an hour for about 5 minutes when a voice came over mutual aid 1. "This is Captain Kent of Sunburst PD. I'm the incident commander for this TAC alert. All SBPD officers form up in your civil control team leaders. BCSD deputies, state police, and other responding agencies are staging 6 blocks west of Chatterton, forming up and heading downtown." Once on scene, we were directed to a side street to park our squad cars. I was confused on why we were staging 6 blocks away from the original call. Also, why were we supposed to head downtown in the opposite direction? I found a group of 6 deputies from my department and 1 lieutenant standing around talking. I walked up and asked, "Hey, what's going on?" Lieutenant O'Connor turned around to answer. "Well, nice of you to join us. I was just about to tell everyone." He looked at me and said, "You're a reserve deputy, aren't you?" I pointed to my shoulder patch. Underneath the shirt department logo was a small tap that said, "Reserve" on it. "Yes, sir, but I'm looking to be a good fit for full-time when there's an opening in the department." Lieutenant O'Connor waved the answer away and asked, "Have you ever done any riot control?" "I was trained and certified in crowd control, including pepperball and beanbags usage, sir." "Good. Now, listen up, everyone," Lieutenant O'Connor said. "The mob that attacked the 2 officers have turned into a riot and have moved to the downtown area, where they've been attacking anyone and damaging property. Their numbers have swollen up to 500 or so. The mayor said that this is an unlawful assembly, and rumors have it the governor has declared a state emergency and is calling in the National Guard." Why are they doing this? The young female deputy asked. Lieutenant O'Connor replied, Well, there are 3 facts about riots. 1, crowds are anonymous. 2, anonymity breeds violence. 3, violence lowers consequences. You need a catalyst to set off the violence. I'm guessing the 2 officers shot someone who was well liked in the community. Do we know the status of the 2 officers? Asked the same female deputy. Last I heard, their backup showed up and pulled both of them out of there. They were in real tough condition, lots of bad cuts. People even bit them. They were transported to Mercy Medical Hospital for treatment, answered the lieutenant. There were a few murmurs from the deputies. One even did the sign of the cross over his chest. Now, let's get down to brass tacks and discuss our role in restoring peace, Lieutenant O'Connor announced. The front and second echelon of officers will be made up of SBPD and some of the smaller townships. SBPD has 6 of their CRT or Crisis Response Team, aka SWAT, with us. Their captain will be the team leader for the riot team. 3 of the CRT officers will be the gas officers in charge of using smoke and gas grenades. If needed, the last 2 will provide deadly force overwatch on top of the Bearcat. If one of the protesters gets ready to throw a Molotov cocktail or pull a firearm, these guys will be ready to shoot. State Police, along with our K9 and SBPD K9, will be on the arrest team. The Sheriff Department, that's us, will be rear guard and transport. We have 2 of our paddy wagons here that will be used for transport. Our job is to make sure no one slips in behind the group and tries to attack us from the rear. We'll also swap out with the arrest team if needed. Now everyone, don your riot gear. If you have less lethals with you, like the large cans of pepper spray or pepper ball guns, break them out now. Meet back here in 10 minutes. I'm going to check in with the incident commander and let him know the number of deputies I have. I walked back to my squad car, a little confused on how a riot could form so quickly. Emergency vehicles with their sirens blaring could be heard racing around the city in all different directions, no doubt answering 911 calls and doing their best to keep the city from falling apart. The CRT Bearcat armored car rolled past me as I got to my car. The throaty rumble of its diesel engine passed me. Its weight shook the ground, giving me a surge of confidence that we could restore order. I got into my riot gear as quickly as I could. Think of a suit of armor made of hard plastic plating with thick foam padding underneath, and then covered by Nomex, which is a very flame-resistant material. I clipped my drop-leg gas mask pouch on my left side. I then holstered my Monadnock Hardwood 2800. Now, that might sound fancy, but it's just a wooden riot baton. I had to do some digging around the truck of my squad, but found the hard plastic case and flipped it open. Inside, protected by foam, was a Tipman 98 custom paintball gun in bright yellow. I assembled the gun and loaded it with pepper ball rounds. Unlike normal paintball rounds, they were filled with pepper spray instead of paint. When the round hits someone or something, it breaks apart and sends pepper spray in a powder form everywhere. I put on my belt with 4 reloads of the pepper ball gun. Each reload holds 200 rounds of pepper ball. Checked to make sure the CO2 tank was screwed into the pistol grip of the gun and working properly. After ensuring that it was all in correct working order, the other deputies and I returned to the staging area. SBPD took over a parking ramp for the staging area, rally point. Their mobile command and control unit was a heavily modified RV complete with antennae, satellite dishes, and cameras protruding from all areas, along with a flushable toilet trailer and a large tractor trailer with an OWI, Arrest Processing Center. I asked one of the local cops why there was a processing center. He told me it was for processing large numbers of people without overloading the jails. They can fingerprint, photograph, run names to search for warrants, and either give a citation, cut them loose, or load them directly onto the prison bus to be taken to the local jail. There were several ambulances staged here as well, to treat both protesters and officers. As we began to move out, one of the EMTs, holding a cup of coffee in a styrofoam cup, gave the passing officers a 2-finger salute and said, "Good luck out there." Chapter 2. Chaos in the Streets. We marched a few blocks north, and I do mean march. The sound of all the boots hitting pavement at once has a psychological effect to any rioters. The team leader, a captain from SBPD, ordered a company of officers, just a hair over 90 police officers from all over the area, to a halt. First echelon of officers formed a line and donned their gas masks. Behind them, the second echelon did the same. Being that I was in the rear of the group, 2 blocks from the front line, I was lucky enough not to have to put on my gas mask right away. I only needed to put it on if things really kicked off. As I was facing away, I sneaked a peek over my shoulder. I could see thousands of people in the streets, just 6 or 7 blocks away, but stretching as far as I could see. Every now and then, the sound of a window breaking, punctuated by the occasional scream, could be heard. The smell of burning electronics was wafting in the air, and a thin layer of haze was beginning to form. Buildings that were dozens of stories tall lined each side of the street. The captain announced, "Okay, everyone, listen up. We need to disrupt the crowd into lesser, more manageable groups of people. They're causing damage to the city and have been declared an unlawful assembly. We're not here to deny anyone their First Amendment right to free speech. We do need to curb the violence in the city. What exactly they're upset about, it's hard to say, but this ends now. Remember your training and help the man or woman next to you. We'll push up 1 block at a time and clear each intersection, then move forward. We want to disperse and discourage the crowd from any violent actions. Arrest only when necessary, and only the people who are instigating. If they run, let them run. Don't break ranks to chase them down. We're going to move up 2 blocks and then stop. Right, let's move out." We moved up 2 blocks and stopped. The captain started speaking to the crowd on his megaphone. "This is the Sunburst Police Department. This has been declared an unlawful assembly. You must disperse immediately. Use of smoke, tear gas, and pain compliance munitions have been authorized. You may be arrested." The captain repeated these messages a few more times. A female deputy next to me leaned over and said to me, "You know what's weird? I don't hear any chanting or people making demands. All I hear are moans." When I listened closely, she was right. There was no chanting that people normally associate with protests, just a low, Then the command came to move up another block. I heard, "We're only 2 blocks away. We want 3 rounds of smoke between us and them. Fire when ready." The fast boom, boom, boom from the officers firing their Milcor 6-shot 40mm launcher could be heard. Within seconds, smoke filled the streets and blocked the view of any protesters that I could see. Lieutenant O'Connor yelled at me, "Alex, eyes front. Watch your sector." I could hear chanting coming from the street in front of me and coming out from one of the side aisles. I don't remember what they were protesting, and honestly, it doesn't really matter. About a dozen of them were walking up on us. A few were holding makeshift weapons, and the man out front with a megaphone was making a list of dumb demands to the police. Lieutenant O'Connor walked up to me and said, "Alex, fire on the man with the megaphone. He is the voice of the group. Stopping him or driving him back will discourage the rest." I raised my pepper ball gun and pointed at the man who was still a block away from me and yelled, "Turn around and leave or you'll be fired upon." Well, just kept coming at me. Mind does weird things in high-stress situations. I wasn't having any moral or ethical dilemmas about what I was about to do, though. I thought, hey, I used to be on a semi-pro paintball team. I wonder if I still have the skills. It's been a few years, but it's like riding a bike, right? Yeah, probably. I fired quick 6 shots, 4 of them hitting the man's megaphone, and the other 2 going wide to the right. Yep, I still got it. The man looked confused as to why his device stopped working. I fired at his face, and the pepper ball broke and sent the powder into the air. Lieutenant O'Connor came over and gave me a hard thwap on the helmet. "Alex, you don't aim at the face. You aim at the feet or the chest. Do you know the liability you just put yourself in?" Then he leaned in and whispered, "But off the record, that's a hell of a shot. God, I hate the people with the megaphones." The rest of the protesters formed phalanxes around the group's leader with umbrellas, shielding him from any more pepper balls. The female deputy next to me stepped forward with her 12-gauge beanbag shotgun and shouted, "Beanbag!" This signaled to everyone around her that the gunshot they were about to hear was coming from here and not anyone other than law enforcement. She fired, and the beanbag round punched right through the umbrellas, causing the small group to retreat around the block. This all went on for a short time. The group would approach us, and we'd fire at them, and they'd retreat. Lieutenant O'Connor came up at some point and said, "Mask for gas, mask for gas." Half of us put on our gas masks while the other half guarded them, and vice versa. I've been so focused on protecting the back of the riot team that I never took the time to look to see what was happening in front of the formation. No sooner had I put my mask on and checked for a good seal than I heard a dozen quick dum 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 of the launchers, no doubt launching tear gas into the rioters in front of us. Then two more thumps as two canisters arched over our heads and towards the small group of protesters. Lieutenant O'Connor said to all of us, "Ask the captain to fire off 2 rounds of tear gas at that group, since they've been harassing us this whole time. Well, that shit should run them off." The tear gas filled the street, and we were unable to see the protesters. A few minutes went by. I could hear the frontline officers shouting, "Move back!" and hitting their wooden batons against their riot shields. The tear gas cleared up enough for us to see the group running away. As they hightailed it for the hills, a figure appeared from the side alley between 2 buildings. Shuffling towards us, his head resting on his right shoulder like his neck couldn't support his weight. His clothing was old and torn, and what I was hoping was motor oil clung to his shirt. His arms were outstretched and his hands were opening and closing in an almost automatic fashion. I raised my pepper ball gun and fired 6 quick rounds at the guy's feet. The pepper powder wafted into the air. The man didn't seem to be affected. I raised it higher and fired another burst into the man's chest. Still, he didn't care. I fired about 2 dozen pepper balls, hitting him all over. I even saw the powder fly right into his face. I remember reading that 1% of the world's population is immune to pepper spray. The only time I've seen someone shrug off hits like that is when they're high on crystal meth. This guy moved too slow for a meth head. I looked over at the female deputy and could see the look of worry on her face, which I'm sure was reflected on my own face. She fired the beanbag shotgun, hitting the man in the shoulder. He spun around and landed on the ground hard, not once trying to break his fall. I heard his teeth break as they hit the roadway. "Rest team, move in," was shouted from someone behind me, and 2 big guys went out to secure the guy we just beanbagged. They got him in flex cuffs, which are basically very big zip ties, when a second man scrambled out from the other side, close to the arrest team. He fell on top of one of the arresting officers. I dropped my pepperball gun and let it dangle by its sling in front of me. I ran towards them with all the speed and power of a big rig flying down the highway and slammed my hard plastic shoulder protector into the man's chest, knocking him off the officer and sending both of us tumbling to the ground. Before I could get up, the man I just hit fell upon me and started trying to bite me. He bit down hard onto the plexiglass face protector of my gas mask. His teeth left indents and his mouth was wide open, his tongue licking the outside of the visor. Black, thick saliva dripped onto my mask, blurring out the world around me. The squeaking of his tongue on the plexiglass sent shivers down my spine. My pepperball gun was wedged between us, and I couldn't get any leverage to flip the man off me. That's when I saw the blur of a bright green buttstock of a shotgun make contact with the man's face. Then strong arms were helping to pick me up. Lieutenant O'Connor said. Easy there, Alex. We're going to send you up near the front. The SWAT team's medic will look at you. You should have something to disinfect that mask of yours. Another deputy had to guide me up to the front since my mask was covered in black gunk that nobody wanted to touch. I heard an unfamiliar voice in a Texan accent say, Jesus, that's one way to test if your mask actually works. Sit him down here, I got him. I was guided to sit down at the rear bumper of the armored SWAT truck. The same voice said, Now, don't move. I'm going to spray you down with some disinfectant and try and get that nasty stuff off your mask. After a minute or so, I was, in his words, disinfected. My riot gear felt heavier now, and the SWAT medic informed me I was doused head to toe in disinfectant chemicals. The medic turned to walk back inside the armored SWAT truck and said, Hey, Doc, far be it from me to judge your medical ability, but what is that gray spot on my face shield? The medic came back out with a set of pliers and pulled on the mask until the gray spot was gone. The medic looked at the object between his pliers. Well, would you look at that? It was a human tooth. Damn, that man must have bitten down hard to get it stuck in the visor of your mask like that. Sure enough, it was a tooth. It wasn't a small piece either. It was most of the tooth. I looked at the medic and said, Hey man, do you have some water or something I can have? He nodded and said, Yeah, let me dig some out. We got a case of water inside that SWAT truck. He went back inside the armored SWAT truck then. I stood there and just took a second to let the situational awareness sink in. We heard the sound of smoke and tear gas grenades being fired, and a steady moaning could be heard over the SWAT truck's diesel engine. I leaned around the armored truck just enough to be able to see the other SWAT guys on the arrest team decked out in full battle rattle, beside the Milcor grenade launchers that looked like giant revolvers which held 6 40mm grenades. Each man had a heavily customized rifle slung on his back. No doubt they were fully automatic. Now, I'm a bit of a gun nerd, but the accessories they had looked like some alien technology hanging off their rifles. As they were firing the grenade launchers, the smoke became too thick to see much past the arrest team who headed into the smoke. I lost sight of them for a moment, and the next thing I knew, they were back with someone handcuffed and a bite hood over the offender's head. The bite hood was a thick cloth bag that was solid on the bottom and made of a mesh netting on the top. That way the person who was wearing it could still see where they were going. It prevented the wearer from biting or spitting on the officers. They walked the arrestee past me and put the person in the back of the paddy wagon, yelling, "Right, this one's full." The transport van left and another one took its place. I managed to talk to the 2 officers as they made their way back to the front before they were obscured by smoke. Yeah, how's it going up there? I noticed we haven't moved in some time. One of the officers spoke up. Yes, getting tough up there. We're holding one intersection, but they're coming at us from 2 sides. The front and the second echelon are almost 100% engaged, and the protesters are trying to push their way through with brute force. Yeah, we're scooping 1 or 2 of them up at a time and arresting them. But these fuckers are biting, and we're running low on bite hoods. Hey, do you guys have any in the rear? I shook my head no. Oh, we only made 2 arrests so far. We just tossed them in the wagon. I'm just guessing, but I wouldn't know. I was pretty much blind when they brought me up here for a medical. Cries for help could be heard coming from the front. The officer just looked at me and said, I guess we're needed. Gave me a fist bump. Just then, the SWAT team medic poked his head out the back of the SWAT truck. Hey man, I have your... But his words were stopped mid-sentence, as a snip, followed closely by a ping, could be heard. He dropped my water bottle, which was disappointing since the cap was off of it, and it spilled everywhere on the pavement. The medic jumped out of the armored truck and looked up when another snip and ping could be heard. I looked up to where he was looking. I had no idea what that sound was or what was going on that caused the medic to jump out so fast. I saw the 2 SWAT officers on top of the truck who were the deadly force Overwatch. Their rifles had high-end suppressors and scopes, along with bipods extended as the two officers laid belly down out on the roof. I saw it happen. The first officer and then the other squeezed back on their trigger with the rifles tied up against their shoulders. They moved back ever so slightly that I almost missed it. The rifle barely made a sound, but I heard another soft snip. No doubt subsonic ammunition was being used. The only real indication that the rifle was even being fired was the ping from the ejected casing as it clanged on top of the armored roof. The medic said something into his radio, which I couldn't hear because the SWAT team was special and had their own radio frequency that was encrypted. This way no one with a police scanner could listen in. He jumped inside the SWAT truck like a man who'd just been set on fire and came out with a heckler and a Colt MP7. Oh, this was my dream gun. He extended the stock and shouldered the small rifle, pointing it forward towards the direction of the riot team. The shooting from the officers picked up with more urgency now. It was so fast that I couldn't even tell the difference between the two sounds. I heard the first unsuppressed shot ring out from somewhere ahead of us. The two canine dogs started to bark, the hackles on their back raised ready for orders to attack. Then another pistol shot rang out, followed by another. It went deathly quiet for a brief second. I looked over at the SWAT medic. I noticed that the barrel of his weapon was shaking. This rattled my nerves. I know he's just a SWAT medic, but he's still on the SWAT team and does all the same things the rest of the SWAT team does. Granted, he's normally towards the back of the team, but he went through the same training as everyone else. Watching someone like him get nervous is never a good thing. The SWAT officer with the grenade launchers slung them behind their backs and brought their rifles up. Then, it happened. It's like someone had flipped a switch. An almost instantaneous pop of pistols from all over could be heard. Through the smoke, I could see the muzzle flashes of over 36 pistols. It was as if every riot officer on the line got sick and tired of dealing with the rioters and just collectively said, "Screw this. This is much easier anyway," and then just started shooting them. The loud rip of one of the SWAT officers' rifles on full auto added an exclamation point, exclaiming that whatever was going on, all resemblance of law and order had broken down. Two riot officers in full armor, bearing shields and wooden batons, sprinted past. They were covered in the black gunk. Then a group of 3 ran past yelling, "Fall back! The line has collapsed! Fall back to the rally point!" Pistol shots were still coming out from the front, but the firing had started to die down. Whether it was from running out of ammo or being taken down, I'll never know. Chapter 3. The Collapse. Sounds of moans shadowed the din of combat. They came shambling out of the smoke like some hellish nightmare. The SWAT team opened up. I watched as one of the rioters took over 12 rounds to the center mass and did not go down. One of the SWAT officers I could not see who was going all out on full auto. Oh, the machine gun only fell silent after a bloody scream. A lady in a business suit grabbed one of the officers as he was reloading his rifle. He hit her with the stock of his rifle, took a step back, and let his rifle go. He brought up the Milkor grenade launcher on his back. He fired close to point blank, and the 40mm round punched a hole in her chest. The sternum completely caved in, and a loud snap sound echoed as the round hit her, spin snapping in and coming to a stop. The grenade went off and smoke started to billow out of her chest as she fell on top of the officer. I took off running, and a few other riot officers were running as well. I was trying to suck in as much air as I could, but was failing miserably due to the gas mask. I felt trapped and closed off. I wanted to rip off my mask and suck in the air, but with all the tear gas I knew, I'd be done for. I had to fight down the rising tension in my stomach. Vomiting with a gas mask on is an experience I didn't want to have, but the thought of all those officers firing into a crowd of unarmed civilians made me sick. I reached my old position, rear guard, and yelled, "Lieutenant! Lieutenant!" The other deputies were looking at me like I was a madman. I know the distance was only 4 blocks, but they had to hear all the shooting that took place. Lieutenant O'Connor ran over. "Alex, what the hell is going on? You just had a dozen guys from the front run past saying something like, 'They're not human.' What's with all the shooting?" "I don't know, man. I saw one of the rioters get hit a dozen times. They don't die. You can't kill them. I was told to fall back to the rally point." Lieutenant O'Connor said, "Just stay here. I'm going to see what's happening." He jogged into the dense smoke. The other 5 deputies and myself stood there looking at where the lieutenant had disappeared into the smoke. Pistol shots rang out. Lieutenant O'Connor ran back at us, yelling, "God, fall back to the rally point now." His hand was bleeding, and I could see a ragged wound on his arm. His service pistol was unholstered. All of us took off running. We were only 8 blocks away from the rally point. I figured we could regroup and go in more heavily armed if necessary. As we turned the corner, the scene that awaited us was in utter chaos and disarray. Officers were fighting with people. A paramedic was fighting someone off while a police officer hit him repeatedly with his baton. He hit the person so hard that the baton broke in half. A few of the deputies waded into the maelstrom to help. 2 officers were backed into the wall of the parking ramp while several people slowly shambled towards them. One of the officers had a large can of pepper spray and sprayed everyone in the face. Pepper spray was dripping off them, but no one in the group seemed to care. The other police officer pulled his service weapon and started shooting into the group. One of the rounds missed and actually struck another officer in the shoulder, causing him to fall down. As he fell, 3 of the things jumped on him. The door to the OWI Arrest Processing Center opened up and a bunch of them came walking out, the moans growing louder with each footstep. 2 deputies with beanbag shotguns started shooting into the crowd of them. As they made their way towards us, Lieutenant O'Connor began shooting his pistol at them. I noticed that every time a round struck their head, they'd go down and stay down. I pulled out my pistol but was hesitant to shoot. There were fellow officers and other first responders in the mix. I couldn't bring myself to shoot. Lieutenant O'Connor yelled over the battle raging in front of us. "Ditch the less lethals and head back to the car. We need to get out of there." The remaining deputies and I ran for our cars a few blocks away. There were only 4 of us left. We made it to our cruisers, huffing and puffing, trying to breathe. Everyone ditched their gas masks. The smell of death was in the air along with burning buildings and melting plastics. It was all an assault on the nostrils. One of these things was walking down the street alone. A single headshot put it down. "What's the plan, Elsie? Where do we go?" one of the deputies asked. Lieutenant O'Connor spoke. "I don't know. Get out of the city. If you have family in the city, get them and get out. If you can't get out, head towards the SBPD headquarters building. It should be safe there." The female deputy asked, "You mean get out and head back to the sheriff's department?" "No. These things, or whatever they are, have more than likely taken over the sheriff's department. The jail's attached to that building, and we've been transporting the rioters there. There have been more than a few of them." He pointed at the thing laying in the street. It was wearing a janitor outfit and had black blood covering the front of its body. "I don't know where you guys should go, but get out and be safe. I'm already done for." "That's not true, Lieutenant." "Yeah, it is, Alex. Look." Lieutenant O'Connor showed us the wound on his hand. It looked like someone took a chunk out of it between the thumb and pointer finger. Like a badly infected bite wound. Black lines spiderwebbed from the contact point all the way up his arm. "I bet you any money I have whatever is causing all this. There's no point in trying to get out, for me. All I can do is delay them from spreading out." Lieutenant O'Connor reached into his police SUV and came out with his patrol rifle. The sound of footsteps of hundreds, if not thousands, could be heard. A chorus of moans was carried out in the wind. Lieutenant O'Connor shook each of our hands with his healthy hand and wished us all the best. The 3 remaining deputies, myself included, shook hands with each other as well. I was the last to pull away. Didn't know how far this thing was spreading, but I needed to get out of the city somehow. I tried to call Erica, but all I got was, "Your call cannot be completed as dialed. Please try again later." The last thing I saw was Lieutenant O'Connor propping his rifle in the crook of his SUV's door, starting to fire as a slow-motion wave of things slowly walked towards him. Didn't even make a dent in their numbers. I drove a short time, trying to get back onto Highway 35 and get out of the city. I go up a block or so and see a crash blocking the road and have to double back and take a different way. It's quiet in my squad car. Well, I was actually thinking, the radio should be going crazy right now. Then it hit me. Radio. I still have it set for Mutual Aid 1, not the Sheriff's Department frequency. I went to change it, but my riot gear was rubbing against the prison cage. I knew I should have taken this off. But on the other hand, it is bite-proof and I might need it. I actually had to turn my torso just to get at the radio control knob. That's when I heard the air horn and looked up to see a flashing red light of an emergency vehicle. It was coming at me from the passenger side. I heard the crunch and felt the impact as my Crown Vic flipped onto its roof and spun like a top. My duty bag went flying and my documents and paperwork scattered everywhere. The hit deployed my airbags and something hit my head really hard. I felt myself starting to black out. The last thing I remember hearing was the AM/FM radio being turned on in 3 tones with the emergency alert system. This is not a test. The following message is transmitted at the request of the Bear Creek County Sheriff's Department. This is a shelter-in-place warning for all residents of Bear Creek. Lock all of your doors and do not open them for anyone until the all clear is given. This message will repeat. I could tell that I was being dragged. The sound was more intense than the pressure on my back. The sound of my metal riot helmet scraping across the pavement was the first thing that awakened my senses. I could barely make out the voice in the distance. "Easy, Alex. We'll get you to safety." There was one other voice, this one a female. "Open these doors right now, or I'll break the glass, and no one will be safe." I could hear the sound of cheesy background music playing. It was peaceful and relaxing. As someone ran up to me, I could hear gunshots ringing out. Someone was yelling, "In here, it's safe here." My vision was blurry, and I couldn't make out what they were talking about. "Hey buddy, I'm gonna need these." I heard the unsnapping of buttons and the tug on the front of my belt. I subconsciously reached for my sidearm. Still felt it in my holster. The voice said, "Don't worry, Alex. You'll get to keep that." Another voice from farther away yelled, "Hey, get back out here. They're closing in." I blacked out again. I could faintly hear a female voice yelling, "Help me move him." Felt like I was floating. A bright light filled my vision like a train coming down a tunnel. I opened my eyes and let out a groan. It felt like I'd been on a drinking bender all night. My head was pounding. My vision was finally coming into focus. I could see a man in an EMT uniform shining a flashlight in my eyes. "Welcome back to the land of the living, deputy." What happened?" I croaked. "You got into a car accident and took a pretty big hit to the head. And lucky for you, you still had your riot helmet on." He reached down and lifted my riot helmet to my face. A big dent on the right side was clearly visible. "Yeah, where am I?" I asked as I tried to stand on shaky legs. "Well, deputy, you're on the 5th floor of the luxurious Sunburst Downtown Hotel and Conference Center." The room was large with big glass windows. The windows overlooked downtown. A small coffee shop with a sign that proudly stated, "Serving the city's best coffee," was displayed. Comfortable chairs and couches attuned the area. A handful of people were in the room. Most of them were wearing worried expressions while on their cell phones trying to make calls. Hey, I'm Peter, by the way. Alex, I said, shaking his hand. Yeah, you would have called me a few hours ago when that jogger got attacked. Hey, how is he? Well, he's probably dead, Peter answered. A voice called out from over by the windows. Hey, what up, brother? I turned to see who it was and was overjoyed when I realized it was Tenny, former Bear Creek County Sheriff Deputy who left the department a few years ago to work for the city of Sunburst Police. Tenny walked up to me. I noticed he wasn't in uniform, just a black leather jacket and blue jeans. He had a pistol in an off-duty holster on his left side. We embraced and performed our handshake, slapping our hands together. It's kind of hard for me to translate, but the meaning behind the shake was clear. We're safe now. We always did handshakes after any major incident or adrenaline-producing event. So, zombies, who knew? Tenny said. I looked at him confused. Zombies? It can't be that. Zombies are not real. They can't be. This is not some Joe McKinney novel or some George A. Romero movie. This is real life. The dead don't just walk around. Tenny walked me over to the big windows and pointed down. On the streets below, dozens of bodies lay face down on top of a moving cop car. My cop car was upside down and on fire. Back half of an ambulance was sticking out of a clothing store. A group of 6 were on their knees gathered around something laying on the ground. 2 people ran down the street, followed by a group of 30 who were slowly following after them, arms outstretched. You could hear the collective moans, which caused others to get up and follow. My head was spinning. Whether that was from the car accident or the newfound information that they were in fact zombies, well, couldn't be sure. I flopped myself down in one of the chairs. A woman brought me a glass of water in a cheap styrofoam cup and sat down across from me. She was African American and short, about 5'5" if I were to guess. She wore a business-looking suit that was stained with dry blood. She had a badge on the front of her belt and a pistol on her right hip. Her leg had a bandage on it, and she walked with a subtle limp. Tenny sat on the arm of the chair next to her. Alex, this is Talon, detective with Sunburst PD. It's really nice to meet you. Thanks for the water, I said as we shook hands. Peter came over and sat down next to us as well. Tenny reached into his jacket pocket and handed me an empty magazine from a pistol and said, Well, before I forget, you can have these back. Sorry, but we had to use them when you were unconscious at the time. I took them and did a quick check of the belt. Everything was still there, minus the magazine. I pressed the magazine release button on my service pistol, saw that it still had a full mag in it. Well, that's one bright spot, I thought to myself. Pulled my radio off my belt and set it on the small coffee table in front of us. Yeah. Does anyone else have a radio? I asked. Well, I didn't have time to grab one, Tenny replied. Peter pointed to the bright green shoulder mic on his radio and said, Batteries are dead on mine. I looked at Talon. I had to use mine to escape, she said. Took a deep breath and said, Okay, mine's on Mutual Aid 1. I was at the downtown riots. A bunch of us were. I explained what had happened. When I was finished, they all had a look of shock on their faces. Since we were safe at the moment, we all agreed that we were only going to listen in and try to get a story of what was going on out in the city. I switched over to the SBPD frequency. I don't think anyone was ready for what we heard, with chaotic emergency alert tones going off non-stop. Need backup at the intersection of Jackson and Division. I got hundreds of them. I need... Officer down. Officer down. Just south. This is SWAT Team 2. St. Mary's is lost. I repeat, the hospital is lost. We do not have the force profile to hold the... Hello. Someone help me. I found this radio on a dead police officer. I'm hiding in a closet, but They know I'm here. Please send it. Rapid-fire gunshots followed by screams and moaning could be heard. This is Trooper 377. I got a mix of about 24 officers and private civilians with firearms, trying to hold them back on Cook Bridge. We need more units out here. An explosion drowned out the transmission, followed by... Jesus H. They're bombing the bridge. All units get off the bridge. The transmission cut out. Seconds later, we all heard several distant booms. One of the people that was up here with us yelled, "Look!" Everyone looked out the window to see 3 fireballs blossom from the direction of the bridge. A man wearing a black polo shirt with the word security on it said, "Up here. We can see better from the roof." Tenny and I ran to the stairwell, and a few others followed. I looked back and saw Talon and Peter staying behind. We burst onto the roof just as the last of the fireballs was burning out. Thick black smoke poured out from where the explosions had come from. 2 fighter jets came screaming past with the glow of their afterburners visible in the setting sunlight. 2 sharp booms echoed out. "What the hell was that?" the security guard asked. Someone replied, "Sonic boom. They're not supposed to get that fast over the United States. Jeez, last time they did that was 9/11. The jets banked hard and started flying back towards us. Some of the people started waving their hands and jumping up and down, trying to get the pilot's attention. Something dropped from under one of the fighter jet's wings, followed by a plume of white smoke which formed behind the object. A few seconds later, the cell phone tower that was erected on the building a few blocks over exploded. Then another tower exploded, followed by a third and a fourth tower. All around the city, they went up in a ball of fire. Tenny yelled, "Everyone, off the roof right now." Everyone ran back down the stairs as more fireballs sprang up on the various TV, radio, and cell phone towers across the city. As we all made it back to the 5th floor, Talon walked over with my radio still in her hand. "So, what happened up there, boys?" she asked. "Oh, looks like the Air Force is blowing up all communication towers," I replied. "Whatever's going on, they don't want us getting a message about it to the outside." "Well, that explains why your radio went silent. They blew up all the radio repeaters. You'd be lucky to get more than 2 blocks with this thing," Talon explained. As she tossed the police radio back to me, I noticed that she looked a touch paler than she had before. The hard lines on her face, which showed years of street-hardened experience, slowly faded as she plopped herself back down onto one of the oversized chairs. Peter rushed over to her and began to check her vitals. He looked up at us. "Well, it's not a bite," he said immediately. "She got a bad cut when we hit your squad car. She wasn't wearing a seatbelt in the back of the ambulance and went flying into the bulkhead. I think she's nicked an artery. Got the bleeding slowed without using a tourniquet, but she lost a good amount of blood. The fact she's still conscious, let alone walking, is a miracle." "Well, now that we don't have communications with the outside world, let's try to get a big picture of what's going on," I said. I began to share my events, starting with the TAC alert and ending with the crash. When I was finished, Talon began to retell her experience. Chapter 4. Detective Talon. The phone rang on my office desk. "Hello, Detective Talon?" The words made the corners of my lips curve up in a subconscious smile. "Detective, this is Captain Matt. Got a call from one of the patrol officers. Possibly a 187 at the South Side apartment. They got 3 bodies. CSI is already there photographing the scene. Get your partner and get over there ASAP." "Yes, sir," I said, while trying to keep the excitement out of my voice. I know it might sound bad to be excited about dead bodies. This was my first case. I was assigned after getting promoted to detective and going through all the classes and training. I sprang out of my seat. Still felt weird going from a full duty belt with every police tool under the sun to do my job. It's just a pistol, a spare mag, and one set of handcuffs. Trying to suppress my excitement, I calmly walked over to my partner's desk. My heart was racing 1,000,000 miles an hour. Detective Evan was my partner. He was out of shape. His 15 years behind a desk as a detective was obvious around his midsection. "Hey, Evan," I said. "We got one." Evan looked around the computer monitor at his desk and asked, "Well, what do we got?" Possible 187 homicide at the Southside Apartments with 3 victims. With a deep breath and a squeak of his office chair, he stood, tossing the keys to me, saying, "I'll bring the car around in front if you're driving." I pulled the unmarked maroon Crown Victoria to the front and Evan got in. We just pulled onto the street when the police radio in the car came to life. 5280, 5290, respond to 618 Chatterton. 618 Chatterton for a group of 5 fighting. We headed to the south side of the city when 2 marked police cars drove past us in the opposite direction with their lights and sirens activated. Well, I thought to myself, go get 'em, boys. We crossed the railroad tracks to the city's south side. Evan let out a grunt of disdain and said, "What a dumpster fire." "What do you mean by that?" I asked. "The south side is all ghetto. This is the 5th murder this month. You know how many drive-bys and how much gang shit happens over here? Yeah, not to mention the home invasions." "Yeah, this was my beat for 5 years. I know the area. Yeah, there are some neighborhoods that are bad. There's no denying that, but a lot of these people work hard. This is where poverty meets pride. The overwhelming majority of the people keep their yards clean and their houses looking spick and span. Don't let a few bad apples ruin it for everyone. With both parents working and kids off to school, criminals know no one will be home, so it's easy pickings. That's why most of the people here have bars over the windows, to deter the would-be home invaders." We got to the apartment complex. A police car with its emergency lights on was on the side of the road, and traffic cones blocked the roadway. I flashed our emergency lights hidden in the grille and visor, and the cop moved the traffic cones for us. We pulled up and put the car in park just as the police radio started back up. "Dispatch, this is 5290. Myself and 5280 have 5 individuals at gunpoint. Send backup." Dispatcher replied with, 10-4, 5270, 5260, 5250. Respond, 1033 to 618 Chatterton, 618 Chatterton to back up 5280 and 90. All other officers stay off the air until I hear back from 5280. I heard police sirens from different parts of the city as the officers were on their way to help another officer. We walked under the crime scene tape, which was super cool to do and makes you feel like you're important. I saw 2 ambulances with their back doors open and 2 gurneys with white sheets over them. The driver of one of the ambulances was chowing down on a sandwich. I recognized him from my time as a beat cop. A lot of the first responders get to know each other from all the different calls they go on. They normally end up becoming good friends. I walked up to the ambulance just as Peter beat down on his lunch. I held up my badge and said, "License and registration." Peter let out a laugh, which caused crumbs to fly out of his mouth and land all over the steering wheel. Peter then rolled down the window after swallowing his food. "Hey, Talon, how are you? It's been a while since I've seen you. I thought you switched patrol areas on me." No, nothing like that. But I did make detective. That's why I've been off the road for a few months. Haven't been to our book club meeting." "Well, I've been studying," I replied. "That's awesome. Congratulations. I'm guessing that's why you're here?" "Yeah, it's the first case they've assigned me. If you want to give me your take on it, my ears are open. I know you're a big mystery fan of those Who Did It books." "Yeah, sure can. When I arrived on the scene, we had 3 victims. Older male, older female, and a younger male. My best guess was a murder-suicide. Shot his wife and kid, then ate the licorice himself. Did 5 minutes of chest compression on the female and younger male, as they were pulseless, not breathing. We were unable to revive them. 2 gunshot wounds were located on both victims with no shell casing around. I'm guessing it was a revolver, maybe a .357. Definitely hollow points, as there were no exit wounds on the backside. Now I'm just waiting for them to load them up on the rig and take them to Mercy Medical for the examination. It's a very good deduction you have, I said. We'll, however, need an official statement from you and the other paramedics on scene that worked on the bodies. Also, hold up a second on loading them up. I'd like to take a look at them quickly. As my partner and I walked back to the ambulance, Evan said to me, "Good deduction on his part, but don't let his side of the story sway the way you gather information. I get he's your boyfriend and all, but I recommend seeing the crime scene first before you start questioning people. First off, he's not my boyfriend. And second, I know that. I just like to get insight on things." We got to the gurney and lifted up the sheet covering the victim. The female part of her shirt was cut away and 2 bullet wounds were visible in her chest. I had one of the EMTs help me roll her on the side, and just like Peter said, there were no exit wounds. I removed my examining gloves and said to Evan, "Possible hollow point rounds. It could be smaller FMJ round that struck the ribs and didn't go all the way through." I turned to the EMT. "Have the doctor email me the findings when he's done." And I handed him my business card. Just then, the sheet moved. I jumped back as the EMT and Evan let out a laugh. "These fresh corpses. You never ever seen a death twitch before, detective?" the EMT asked with a chuckle. I shrugged off the response, and Evan and I turned towards the apartment. A very young-looking officer was guarding the crime scene. The officer took our names and badge numbers and signed us in. Put on our hairnets, face masks, gloves, and shoe booties to avoid tracking any unwanted DNA to the crime scene. The CSI, crime scene investigators, were hard at work photographing everything. Small plastic number tents were strewn about the area. I talked to one of the CSI techs. He gave me a list and a brief description of what evidence was removed and what was still needed processing. I walked around paying particular attention to the blood splatter on the ceiling and walls. I saw a couch not too far from where the suspect had eaten his own gun. I asked the CSI techs if we could lift the couch up. They didn't see why not, since they'd already processed that room. Evan grabbed one side, and the other CSI tech grabbed the other, and they lifted. "Ah, there it is," I said. The CSI tech, not lifting the couch, looked over and said, "Yep," and began snapping away with his camera. After a few minutes, Evan let out a strained, "You two almost done? God, this pig is heavy." The CSI tech nodded at me. Using sterile metal tweezers, I grabbed the pistol and removed it from under the couch. Evan and the tech set it down with a thump. I examined it closely. It was a .357 revolver. Evan grabbed an evidence bag and I popped open the revolver cylinder and saw that all but one round had been fired. I dropped the rounds into the evidence bag, making the weapon safe for the CSI techs to handle. A voice called out from the front door. "Detectives, could you come here quick?" Evan looked at me and asked, "Did you see what kind of bullets they were before you sealed the evidence bag?" I took a second to think and realized I hadn't. "No, I didn't," I replied sheepishly. The voice called again. "Detectives?" Evan said, "Talon, these are the small details you need to remember to check. Now this is clearly an open and shut case, but remember to slow down and check. I'm glad you found the suspected murder weapon." Evan was cut off when the voice, almost in a panic, called out, "Detective, something's going on out here." Evan let out a sigh. "Probably the victim's family members. I'll go see what the deal is." A moment later, Evan called out to me. "Well, Talon, your boyfriend got one thing wrong. They're not dead." I stopped what I was doing and yelled back, "He's not my boyfriend." "Yes, they are. I examined them myself." "Well, come out here and look." "Why?" I I replied. Well, I don't know what's going on. Can't be possible. What's not possible? I asked while making my way over to the window to look outside. They're moving on the frickin' gurney. Who is? Evan's voice went up an octave. The fucking dead people. They're getting up. I looked outside to see the younger male starting to move. Female EMT was beginning to check for a heartbeat with the stethoscope when he sat up and bit the EMT on the arm. She let out a scream, and I saw skin and flesh get pulled away from her arm. A very large EMT, built like a lumberjack, rushed in and punched the teenager who just bit his co-worker in the face, sending him rolling off the gurney and onto the ground. The female EMT was spraying blood everywhere. Oh, the bite must have gotten the radial artery. The other EMT on scene rushed in to stop the bleeding. They put her in the back of the second ambulance and raced off. The female started to move as well. She got off the gurney and started walking toward the young officer guarding the crime scene. Evan was standing in the doorway behind him. The young officer fumbled around his belt line until he found his taser. In a shaky voice that cracked when he spoke, he said, "Don't come any closer, or you'll be tased." She was scrambling forward, getting closer and closer with each step. Evan yelled, "He's just tased her already. She's crazy." The officer pulled the trigger on his taser. The probe shot out with a pop and made contact with her flesh. The woman faltered for a second and kept walking forward with her arms extended towards the young officer. And Evan yelled, "Zap her again." The taser gives a 5-second zap. The back of it even has a countdown timer so the officer knows when it's safe to arrest the person or give them another zap if they're not complying to the officer's orders. I saw the timer count down from 5 to 0. That woman never stopped walking. The young officer looked back at Evan, eyes wide and scared. "What do I do now, sir?" "If you got pepper spray, now'd be the time to use it, son." The officer dropped the taser on the ground and found his can of OC pepper spray. A 1-second burst is all you need, but in his panic he emptied the whole can into her face. It did nothing to discourage the woman from coming forward. The officer, who never moved from his spot, let out a scream as the victim of a shooting no more than 30 minutes ago bit into the officer's neck. Evan pulled his pistol out and shot the woman point blank in the face, causing her to fall down and stay down. The officer was choking on his own blood. One of the EMTs ran up to help as the teen got up from the ground and made his way toward Evan. Evan turned and fired 3 rounds into the teenager. Watched the new holes form, right next to where the previous gunshots were. A fury of shots rang out as the officer, who was at the roadblock, ran up and emptied his pistol into the teen. Bullets ripped into his body, and he went down. The EMT working on the younger officer jumped back in alarm as the officer grabbed onto Evan's leg and bit down hard. Evan fell to the ground. I ran out with my pistol in my right hand, but before I could even raise it, Evan fired 1 round off, hitting the officer in the head. Blood began to pour out of the leg bites. Luckily, the other EMT and Peter jumped into action as the officer from the roadblock reloaded and moved forward, talking into his radio. They put a tourniquet onto Evan's leg and cinched it down tight. Evan let out a groan of pain. We put him in the back of the ambulance and sped off towards Mercy Medical Center. The last thing I saw out of the ambulance's back windows was the teenager getting back up and walking towards the officer. The 2 CSI techs ran out of the building. Chapter 5. The Hospital. I got on my portable police radio. "This is Detective Talon. 1033, officer down. We need a police escort to Mercy Medical. We're on the south side of 9th Street, just north of the railroad track. Break. Send additional units to the south side apartment. An EMT from SBFD and an officer from SBPD have been attacked. Shots have been fired. Dispatch sounded frantic. It was like everything in the dispatch center decided to go tits up all at once. Message received. No units available at this time. They're downtown dealing with a riot. On other urgent calls or just not answering their radios. Hey, good luck. I looked at my radio in complete shock and yelled out loud. No units available? How the hell are there no units available? Shit, I'd take a meter maid blocking traffic to help up at this point. The ambulance, with its lights flashing and a siren blaring, raced down the empty streets. Peter, I yelled, how much longer do we have? Oh, we're 3 minutes out. I'll let them know we have an officer down and we're coming in hot, but no one's answering me at the hospital. Every now and then a cop car or fire truck would zoom past and an occasional gunshot could be heard. Peter's partner was calling vitals over the radio. Evan lost consciousness at some point. Blood sloshed back and forth with every turn we took. We heard the sounds of helicopter blades overhead as the Flight for Life helicopter ambulance was coming in to land on the roof. This brought forth a surge of hope for me. Hey, they're going to helicopter him to a different hospital, I thought. The parking lot was full of cars and people rushing other people into the front entrance of the building. We raced into the ambulance bay to see the other ambulances from the crime scene already here. The garage door closed automatically behind us. Peter, the other EMT, and I all jumped out, expecting to see a team of doctors to whisk Evan up to the waiting chopper. Instead, we were greeted with screams. The other ambulance's back doors were open and a bloody handprint was on the inside of the glass. Blood dripped down the back of the rig and went down the small drain built into the floor of the garage. The other EMT agreed to stay with Evan and continue checking his vitals until we could get someone here to help. It'd be too risky to move him until we knew for sure we could get help. Peter and I took off down the hallway and past some dark offices. We ran into the ER room, which was an absolute charnel house. The nurse in scrubs was lying face up as two doctors scooped up her guts into their mouths. A security guard was being torn apart by one nurse and 3 patients in hospital gowns. One of them still had an IV in their arm. Looked like someone had taken a can of red paint, put it in a mixer with no lid and fully sent it. God, a janitor was gnawing on someone's arm. Banging on metal doors could be heard. The doors had quarantine signs that were obviously quickly slapped on at some point. There had to be around 30 of these horrible things in this room. I whispered to Peter, "We need to get out of here before they notice us." Peter nodded his head, indicating a yes. We started to tiptoe our way back to the double doors that would lead us down the hallway and back to the ambulance. Before we opened the door, we saw a dozen of these things come out from the room. It was a surgical team in scrubs and masks. There were black stains on their masks and all over their scrubs. Thinking quickly, I took a crash cart, a medical cart with a defibrillator, medical supplies, and basically everything else you'd need to bring someone back from the dead. I moved it quietly in front of the door, blocking it. This was also blocking our only way back to the ambulance, though. "Peter," I whispered, "you know this place better than I do. How do we get out of here?" "Well, I have an idea. I'll need your radio." I gave him my radio. With a few presses of the buttons and one turn of the knob, he had it all set. He then told me the plan. "We'll take the elevators that are over to the left." He pointed to the 3 elevator doors. "I'm going to use your radio and throw it down the hallway." I changed the frequency to one of those non-used channels. I'll press the orange button on top of my radio, which should activate the emergency tone on your radio. When all these sick people go over there, we'll take the elevator door and go out through the basement. "Peter, you're a genius, you know that?" He then threw the radio down the hallway and it bounced off a wall and into a room. Peter pressed the orange button on top of his radio and the emergency tone began to go off. The creatures got up and started shuffling towards the sound. We made our way over to the elevators and pressed the button. The The soft ding sounded like two cymbals crashing together. It caused two of the monsters to turn towards us. I pulled my pistol as the door chimed open and we backed in. Oh, they were getting closer. Peter kept hitting the closed door button. You know, it doesn't matter how many times you press that button, right? It won't close any faster, I said. Right as the doors were closing, a hand got stuck between them, which caused the doors to reopen. I put my pistol to the thing's head and shot it. I followed that with a shot at the one behind it. The door closed and reopened again. The body was blocking the door, so I jumped out of the elevator and moved the body quickly. But the gunshot got everyone's attention. I started shooting and was able to drop a few more with some headshots before they could get to the elevator doors. The doors finally closed. We both let out a sigh of relief. Peter took his ID badge out and put it next to the scanner, which allowed us to take the elevator down to the basement. As the doors opened, I had my gun up and ready. The hallway was white and clean with the smell of disinfectant in the air. The sign said morgue. I looked at him with an expression that read, "You can't be serious." I checked and cleared the offices as we made our way down the hallway. I didn't want any surprises coming from behind me. As we checked the last office, we saw a doctor with a bite mark on his arm. He was sitting in his chair and a small pistol was on the floor. The side of his head was blown clean out. I cleared the office and noticed a small tape player on his desk. I clicked play and listened to the voice of the dead man speak. "Circulatory, respiratory, and other vital functions have terminated. These subjects are all, well, by all medical definitions, deceased. The infection is spread through direct fluid contact. It must enter the bloodstream through an open wound. Infection duration depends on the size of the wound and its proximity to a major blood vessel. Reanimation will occur no later than 1 to 32 minutes after the victim's primary life functions have stopped. Once reanimation has occurred, the person will respond with immediate homicidal aggression. This has proven to happen 100% of the time." I gasped, and Peter said, "It's a hoax. It's gotta be a hoax. Dead people just don't get up and walk around." I looked at him and said, I think we're dealing with zombies." As we pushed into the door that said exam room, we saw that there were several autopsy tables. All but one of them was empty. On the occupied table, the subject began to move. He flopped onto the floor and stood up. All of his vital internal organs fell to the floor. "Okay, Peter, explain that. He has no organs in his body now, and his large intestines are dragging behind him. He's just a hollow shell." I fired one round into where his heart used to be and yelled, "Come on, Peter. Tell me how this is not real. He's dead. He's got to be." Fired another round into his neck. "But how is he moving then?" Peter yelled. "As a medical man, I have no explanation. God, just kill it already." I shot it in the head, and the man dropped to the floor. "Oh man, shit, Talon. They are zombies." Peter gasped out as he started hyperventilating and pacing back and forth. "Man, oh no. We gotta get out of here, like now." "Okay, Peter, calm down. Now you said there was a way out through the basement. How do we get out?" I asked. "There's a loading door that leads to the parking lot. We use it to have the hearse pick up the body on the back side of the hospital. We'll have to run through the parking lot." We made our way through the last room where they store all the cold bodies. Hearing the banging from inside their individual lockers gave me the chills. We opened the door and ran up the ramp into a world of chaos. Screams and gunshots rang out. It was like being in a war zone. The air raid sirens were going off like crazy. I stopped Peter for a second and said, "Why don't you radio your partner to have him drive the ambulance over to get us? Then we can head to St. Mary's across town to get Evan some help, or just drive out of the city." "Radio's dead," Peter said as he clicked the push-to-talk button twice, which resulted in no sound. Crap. Well, so much for that idea. Right, let's get this over with. We started jogging around the side of the hospital, staying close to the wall. I saw a man holding a baby carrier in one hand, running toward a car with 4 zombies after him. My police instincts took over. I ran out and darted out into the parking lot. They were on him fast. I stopped, raised my pistol, and shot all 4, saving the man's life. He hopped into his car and took off, with not even so much as a thank you. I turned to jog back when something grabbed my foot and bit down. A zombie had pulled itself from under a car and got me. I panicked and shot it. The slide locked back on my service weapon. I reloaded and had a second to breathe. Peter came running over. "Did it bite you?" he asked. "Yeah, but only on my composite toe boot." I then kicked the twice-dead person in the head. I made a mad dash to the ambulance garage. We were running at a good clip when the sound of a jet engine started to spool up and the whooshing of helicopter blades became louder. We both looked up in time to see the air ambulance lift off. I turned to Peter. "God, I'd love to be in there, above all this, safe in it." Before I could finish, the helicopter took off and shot out to the left, and then right back at the building. Well, there were 3 people hanging onto the skids of the chopper. The chopper was clawing for altitude, and the engine was screaming. The rotor blades were trying to beat the air into submission with each rotation. Then a lone, shambling figure stumbled next to the helicopter, which was almost level with the rooftop. We both watched as the zombie got sucked into the air intake and shot out the backside in a mess of gunk. The helicopter flamed out as the engine was starved of air and free fell to the ground below and exploded. Right at the entrance of the hospital, we stared for a moment as the zombies came out on fire, shambling around. Peter and I then sprinted to the ambulance garage, and Peter used his ID badge to unlock the door. We shut the door and saw Evan tearing chunks out of Peter's EMT partner. I said a short prayer, raised my pistol, and shot Evan in the back of the head. Then I shot Peter's partner as well, to be safe. I took Evan's gun, badge, and spare magazine. Peter started the ambulance, and I hopped in the back. As we made our way out of the city, we drove with the emergency lights on. It didn't matter that anyone who was on the road didn't care. We were coming up to an intersection. I was leaning into the front of the ambulance, telling Peter where to go when he suddenly locked up the brakes and we hit something hard. I was flung forward, my leg hitting the edge of the bulkhead. I remember feeling a deep, sharp pain and then nothing. I woke up to Peter yelling, "Down, we need to move fast." I could also hear gunshots. I opened up the door to see someone dragging a sheriff deputy out of his cruiser. He got him halfway out and turned around to shoot 3 zombies in the face. He proceeded to drag him out and drag him over to a nearby hotel. I ran over to help. Peter grabbed his medical bag, slung it over his shoulder, and followed. The man was arguing with someone on the other side of the hotel's glass door. After everything I'd seen today, I was done dealing with people. I walked up and pointed my pistol at the glass and said, "Open these doors right now, or I'll break the glass, and then no one's safe." The pimply-faced kid was wearing a black shirt that said security. His eyes went wide as he stared down the barrel of my pistol. He locked the door and Peter helped the other guy carry the deputy inside. The man came back out and showed me his police badge. "Yeah, I'm Tanny," he said. I showed him mine and replied, "Detective Talon, Homicide Unit." I realized that the title had somewhat lost its meaning now that the dead were walking. Zombies started shambling towards us. Officer Tenney raced back to the upside-down squad car and came out with a deputy's patrol rifle and started blasting the walking dead back. A couple of survivors ran up and into the hotel. Tenney was walking back when the rifle went dry. He discarded the empty rifle and pulled his pistol back out and kept shooting until he ran out of ammo. But more continued to come. He ran back to the sheriff's deputy and pulled the pistol mags off his belt. He then ran back out shooting, thinning the horde that slowly made their way towards us. When he was down to his last mag, he ran back in and told the security guard to lock the doors. Peter and Tenny carried the deputy to the elevators, and we all rode up to the 5th floor. Chapter 6. Officer Tenny. I was working the dog watch. That's 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., except it was more like 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. I was held over on a dumb 911 call that came in at 5:40 a.m. on the west side of the city. An old lady called 911 to report her stolen cats. It was close to 6 a.m. when I arrived to take the report. The old lady told me that someone had stolen her cats. Every night, I let my 9 cats out, and every morning at 5 a.m. they come back to the door. None of them came back, she explained. I think someone stole them. The names are Catrick, Fuzzinator, Cleocatra, Apollo, Porsolo, Jennifer, Winston Purchill, Gin Spur, and Prince Fluffy Bottom. I told her I would canvass the neighborhood. I did 2 slow laps in the patrol car and then parked in front of her house. I spent 10 minutes on the computer playing solitaire and then got out and told her I'd send one of our best animal control officers over to take a full statement as soon as they got in. Well, she was overjoyed. I drove back to the police station, punched out, and changed into my street clothes. I drove to one of our locally owned grocery stores and tapped on the glass. Normally they don't open until 9, but I knew the owner very well. The sliding doors opened. Hey, Tenny, got your bags right here, Lisa said. Oh, thanks a lot. Where's Matt? Oh, the old man's out sick. Yeah, a lot of people are sick. Don't know from what. Well, pharmacy's been swamped these last few days. Don't think there's a single drop of cold medicine left in the building, Lisa replied. Took the bag from Lisa and got back in my truck. The bag consisted of 4 frozen hamburger patties and a 6-pack of ice-cold beer. Now, beer can't be sold until after 9 a.m. per city ordinance. My field training officer taught me this trick. Become good friends with the store owner. Stop in before your shift and buy your adult beverages and have them hold on to them in a cooler in the back until you're done with your shift. It's not uncommon to stop in after a shift and see 5 or 6 bags in the back with different officers' names on them. I entered my condo complex and parked my truck. I got out and saw 10-Coat Tony walking towards me. Now, 10-Coat Tony was so aptly named because he always wore 10 coats regardless of the weather. He was a well-known homeless man who hung around the complex even after being kicked out by security. I talk to Tony every now and then. He likes to tell me what house was making meth or who had warrants. Hey, Tony, how's it going this morning? I asked. Tony let out an... Damn, Tony, that sounds bad. You should go to that free walk-in clinic and get yourself checked out. Well, his response was another. Well, have a good one, I said as I walked into my condo. I put my pistol and badge that I carry off duty on the table and walked to the backyard of my condo. I headed to the small gate park that connects all the ground floor condos. I fired up the small propane grill that we all share and put the burgers on as I cracked open a beer. Yeah, it was close to 9 in the morning, but when you work thirds, 9 a.m. feels like 9 p.m. I just flipped the burgers and sat down in the lawn chair when Leo, the condo's security guard, came up to me. You know, the owner doesn't like people drinking in the communal yard early in the morning. It makes the place look less inviting to new residents. I slammed the rest of my beer and popped the top on a new one. I understand you have a job to do, Leo, and I can respect that, but don't sweat the small stuff. If someone is breaking into cars or trespassing, by all means stop them. One person drinking one beer at 9 a.m. on property they pay to live in's not a reason to get your underwear in a bunch. Leo took a step back and put his hand on the revolver he carried. A voice from one of the other condos yelled out, "Leo, leave him alone, go deal with Tony. He's in the parking lot again." Dave, a third-shift worker at a steel mill, walked out of his place and up to me. "Hey, Tanny, can I bum one off you?" I handed Dave a beer and we clinked bottles and downed a third of it in one pull. With a satisfying, "Things are getting crazy out there, ain't they?" Dave said. It was a statement more than a fact. I wouldn't know. Got me working in the rich West Side. Bunch of old people with money. People who call the police if they see someone who has skin darker than that of an Irishman. Well, today I took a call about missing cats. That's what happens when you pay the city $8,000 a month. They make sure you have a cop right there when you need it. Or should I say, allegedly pay $8,000 to the city. Dave and I let out a laugh. Took the burgers off the grill and offered one to Dave, who politely declined, saying he'd already eaten. Dave continued. "You know, my wife works at the hospital." "Yes, I do. She had to do blood draws on more than one unruly person for me," I answered. "So, anyway, she got called into work early and she left me with some weird voice messages. We're not allowed to have our cell phones on the mill floor, so when I finished my shift at 6 a.m., well, you just listen to them," Dave said as he pulled his phone out of his pants pocket. After a few seconds, he hit play. Voice message. Time 3:27 a.m. "Hey, honey. Sorry to call you at work, but Dr. Fisher called our team in early about something. Didn't really hear him. I was half asleep." The shower turned on and the light hum of a bathroom fan could be heard in the background. "So, just stepping in the shower now. I don't know when I'll be done, but don't let the kids sleep too late. You know how teenagers are. Well, anyway, I love you. Anyway, I love you, and I'll see you when I get back home. Bye." Voicemail, time 4:49 a.m. "Hey, just got out of surgery. Well, kind of. The weirdest thing happened." There was a hesitant pause. The guy we were working on flatlined, and the anesthesiologist hit him with a high dose of adrenaline. The surgeon zapped him with the AED paddles, and he came back, but his vitals were still flatlining. The patient got up off the surgical table. Well, fortunately, we didn't start cutting into him yet. We all left the room and security's handling it right now. We were told his heart monitor was not working. Someone in the background was running, followed by someone shouting, Code Blue in the ICU. Look, I've got to go. I love you," was rapidly said before she hung up. Voicemail. Time 5:05 a.m. Muffled talking, running footsteps, and the sound of fabric against the microphone could be heard. Pocket dial, most likely," I said. Dave nodded in agreement. Then we heard a male's voice. "Okay, time of death is 5:07 a.m. Let's get him strapped down. We don't know exactly what's causing this, so let's get him down to the quarantine area and call the CDC and the MIDRP to let them know we got another one." There was a scream, followed by more footsteps and a woman yelling, "Where are you taking my husband?" There was some more arguing back and forth. "Doctor, we've got one moving in room 2. A male voice followed. "It's only been 2 minutes this time." Another male voice could be heard. "Oh, Jesus, it's speeding up. I'm calling security." The last voice we heard belonged to a female. "Forget that. Call the police." Then the line cut out. Voicemail, time 5:31 a.m. There was the sound of heavy breathing followed by the starting of a car. "Dave, they cancelled all vacationals and leaves. They're calling in everyone. The CDC, DHS, FBI, just everyone. There's no medical reasoning. Long story short, some of the other nurses and even a few doctors left. I don't know if I'm going to have a job tomorrow." Tires could be heard squealing as if someone was taking a turn at high speed. "I'm getting the kids, heading up to your parents' cabin up north. Please meet me there ASAP." Then there was a brief pause. I love you, Dave." "Wow, that's some heavy shit right there," I said. "I know. I feel bad for not going. I tried calling, but it went to voicemail. There's no cell service at the cabin. Before I got to my car last night, the mill's manager told us that due to the number of people calling in sick, we'd get triple pay on top of our overtime, didn't he? That's almost $200 an hour. Well, I can't pass that up. I'll work a double shift, meet the wife and kids tomorrow. I'm also more than a little peeved at her. I checked the bank statement for today, and there was a withdrawal for $2,000 that she spent at a shop called Army Surplus and Survival. Yeah, she knows money's tight. Oh, sorry. Don't mean to ramble on with my personal matters. I'm gonna head in and go to bed. Hey, thanks for the beer." I went back inside my place and turned on my Xbox. I was ready for an hour or so of gaming before I went to bed as well. Sat down in my lazy chair, and before I could grab the controller, I was asleep. I woke a few hours later to my cell phone ringing. The TV screen showed the main menu screen of Dead Island still playing. I had a new voicemail from the police department. "All off-duty law enforcement personnel are required to report for immediate assignment." I turned the TV off and thought, well, there goes my day. I called the police station where I work from and got a hold of Captain Stafford. I told him I'd be in as soon as possible. I hopped into the shower and changed my clothes. My uniform and duty belt stayed at the police substation in my locker. I grabbed my gun and badge and ran out the door. Got into my truck and saw that Davis's car was gone. Sped out of the complex to the sound of Leo yelling, "Slow it down or I'll report you." The traffic was crazy. People were running stop signs and speeding like the world was ending. I saw a minivan with a family in it go onto the sidewalk. "The heck is going on?" I said out loud to myself. I was only a few blocks away from the substation when I saw a young woman trying to fend off a man from assaulting her. I threw my truck in park, jumped out and reached for my police badge in my pocket, put it around my neck. I ran at the man yelling, "Hey asshole, police, stop." I tackled the man to the ground and the woman ran away screaming. I thought with this guy for a minute. He was bigger than me, but a lot slower. Well, almost like he was drunk. He let out and tried to bite me a few times. I had him on his stomach with his hands behind his back. With no cuffs on me, there wasn't much I could do. I pinned his hands down with my legs and called dispatch, but it just kept ringing. A man from one of the stores came over with a roll of duct tape, and with his help, we were able to tape the man's hands behind his back. That's when I heard the sound of approaching police sirens. "Here come the boys in blue," I said. The two police cars raced right by me. I could see a third one coming down the street with its hood all dinged up and scrape marks along the push bumper, along with a cracked windshield. I jumped out into the street, partially in front of the cruiser, and held out my badge. The police car screeched to a halt. I ran up to the driver's side as the window was being rolled down. "Police," I said, while holding up my badge and ID for them to see. "I've got someone who needs transport to the jail for battery. I'll fill out the paperwork once I get to my substation." The two officers in the car looked terrified to no end. They both got out, and I noticed the officer in the passenger seat was holding a shotgun. I brought the officer over to the person on the ground, and together we got the suspect into the back of the police car. From start to finish, he was trying to bite us. Before the officer left, I asked what their assignment was. The officer holding the shotgun said, "We're on our way to the hospital, but we had to divert. A detective on the south side needed backup. Something about an officer down." With that, the two officers left with the prisoner in the back of their car. I hopped into my truck and started to drive to my substation, horrified by the carnage. Traffic was at a standstill. After 5 minutes of not moving, I jumped the curb and drove through some small brush and ended up in an empty fast food parking lot. I parked my truck and walked the 4 blocks to the station. I tucked my badge under my shirt and kept my pistol concealed so I wouldn't draw attention to myself. Well, I was walking like everyone else, trying to blend in. My situational awareness had skyrocketed up to the max. I saw a guy across the street pick up a brick and throw it through a pawn shop glass door. The man entered, and the sound of a shotgun being racked could be heard. I froze, waiting for the shot to ring out. The man ran out of the store yelling and cursing at the person inside. I tried to suppress a chuckle and thought, that person's upset because they can't freely loot a store. When I approached the front of the station, a wave of dead bodies laid on the ground in front of the main doors. Pop marks made by bullets riddled the wall behind all these bodies. The main doors were broken and smashed in. Brass casings of both rifles and pistols were scattered everywhere, reflecting in the sunlight. It looked like glistening dew on grass. I walked up the steps with my gun out, in the low, ready. I walked down the hallway leading to the lobby of the police department. There was an officer on the ground, but he was torn apart and had a single gunshot to his head. The officer's name tag said, E. Hudson. Damn, that really sucks. Eddie just transferred here from Texas not too long ago, I thought. The bullet-resistant glass we used in the lobby to separate the front desk from the office had multiple bullet impacts in it. It was cracked and spiderwebbed all over the place. I used my ID to gain access into the building. Suddenly, all the lights went out. A second later, every other overhead light came on, and I could feel a slight vibration under my feet. The backup generators must have clicked on. The first floor had a few offices and a break room with a door leading out to the back lot where the squad cars were parked. I stuck my head out and saw that only 2 cop cars were left. I walked up to the second floor, which had our armory, locker room, workout room, roll call room, and the showers. I opened the door to the armory and was stunned to see it was empty and completely cleaned out. No radio, taser, or flashlight. The weapon racks were empty as well. MP5s, 870s, 590s, M4s, even the 3 Gulf War era M16 that no one ever used on patrol. But for some reason the top brass didn't want to get rid of. Well, it was all gone. Every last round of ammunition was gone as well. I walked into the locker room next. It looked like a tornado had gone through. The lock on my locker was cut and my spare magazines on my belt were gone. Slammed the lock shut and yelled, "Come on!" I went into the roll call room and saw that papers were all over the place and the windows overlooking the front parking lot were broken. Piles of brass laid in front of the windows. Clearly, a battle had taken place here and I'd missed it. Every name in the second shift was crossed out, along with most of the first shift as well, and only a few in the third shift. In the corner, a handful of names, with mine included, said MIA. Above that, someone wrote, "Head to Police HQ." I saw Hudson's name crossed off on the second shift list. I thought, what? He didn't evacuate to HQ? He was in the hallway? Then it hit me. I became unsteady on my feet. I found the nearest wastebasket and heaved my guts out. They didn't evacuate. They were killed in the line of duty. All of the second shift died less than 48 hours ago. I was recently joking around in the break room with them. Now they're all gone. I sat on a desk and let the entirety of the situation wash over me. Chapter 7. A drive through town. A scream, or a gunshot, I can't remember which, broke me out of my grieving trance. I searched the desks and found a spare squad car key. Luckily, all of our cars are keyed the same, so this key will work on all the cars in the fleet. I opted not to change into my uniform and instead stayed with what I had on. I went to the marked squad car and tried to start it, but got nothing but a click, click, click of a bad starter. The only other car left was a Ford Fusion unmarked car. It started and had a full tank of gas, which worked for me. The police headquarters building shares the same building as City Hall and sits on top of a small hill. Fortunately, I'd have to drive through most of the city to get there. I wanted to swing by the National Guard Armory. A few of the guys on the force were in the National Guard, and I wanted to see if we were going to get help from the big green machine. I took a side street in order to try to get a better view of the armory. I saw a large, lifted pickup truck smash through both sets of chain link and razor wire fencing and crashed into the building. Got stuck halfway out. Hundreds of people were walking through the hole in the fence. I reached into the center console of the squad car and found the binoculars that most undercover cops have with them. I saw the people walking, completely ignoring the razor wire on the ground. It was astounding to the point of sick fascination as one person became completely entangled in the razor wire and just kept trying to walk forward, even as the razors cut deep into their flesh. They all shambled their way into the building. I'd seen enough and left, never once getting close to the armory. I continued to drive, letting the images of people's limbs getting torn to ribbons occupy my thoughts. My peripheral vision caught a bright light. When I looked out the passenger side window, I saw the large flames engulfing the city's large indoor shopping center. I locked up the brakes and got out of the car. Got a good look at the mall and realized there were no firefighters around. A fire this size would have called for every firefighter, not only from the city, but everyone from the surrounding area as well. I was on the outer road of the mall. I saw something come out of the mall's entrance, which was blazing inferno. I reached into the passenger seat and grabbed the binoculars. The neck loop got caught on the siren control box, and when I gave it a yank to free them, it accidentally turned the siren on. I ignored it and turned my attention back to the flaming scene before me. I saw a few people walking about in a daze. Their clothing was smoking and singed. Their skin was charred black and appeared to be falling off. I turned off the siren and reached for the radio mic, but I couldn't find it. I panicked and looked around everywhere. Where the police radio was normally kept was an empty hole with wires sticking out and a post-it note that said, "Radio is broken, waiting on new one. Love, Fleet Management," along with a frowny face at the end of the note. That explains why it was so quiet in the car, I thought to myself. In my shock of realizing that most of my fellow officers were dead, I never once thought about using the radio. I lifted the binoculars to my face once again as the figures in the parking lot were now walking towards me. I could feel my blood turn to ice when a dozen, then 2 dozen, followed by too many for me to count, came walking out of the inferno of the mall. Some were smoking, but most of them were on fire, stiffly moving and walking straight towards me. They were all locked in on me, staring at me. Even the ones with no eyes were slowly marching towards me. The wind carried the smell of burning flesh and the sounds of moans. I panicked and took off. 2 black burnt-out masks on the road were the only traces of evidence I was ever there. I drove fast with my police training kicking in. I just wanted to get to the police headquarters. I could hear the screams and cries for help. It tore at my soul not to stop and investigate, but I slowed up at an intersection where 2 cars had hit head-on. The driver wasn't wearing a seatbelt and was sticking out of the windshield. The skin around their face and arms had been filleted. 2 people were eating the driver. I found a clear section of road and got up to 45 miles an hour when a lady with a baby stroller ran out in front of me. I hit the brakes, snapped the wheel to the left, and jumped onto the sidewalk, going airborne and hitting a telephone pole. The airbags deployed. I didn't not black out, thank God, but I was in a daze. Desperately wanted to check on this woman and her baby. I got out, still breathing in the powder from the airbags, and I managed to cough out, "Are you okay, ma'am?" The lady looked on in shock after just witnessing my car crash. "Yes, I am," she replied while slowly trying to walk away. Is your baby okay? She looked at me confused and asked, Baby? There was a long pause, then she said, Oh yeah, the baby. He's fine as well. I started walking towards her. Well, she looked scared, so I reached into my pocket and put my police badge around my neck. And I said, It's okay, ma'am, I'm a police officer. I'm worried about your baby. I'd just like to check to make sure he's okay. Her eyes went even wider when she saw the police badge. She hurriedly replied, No, it's okay, officer, he's fine. I need to go. Even in her daze, something wasn't adding up. When I got closer, I noticed her pupils were dilated. She had very quick and jerky eye movements, and her face had a slight twitch to it. Ma'am, you were in the middle of the road and not using a crosswalk. I'm going to need to see some identification so I can issue you a jaywalking citation. She had this look at me. You can't be serious. Failure to show ID when asked is abstraction, and you can go to jail, I said as the sounds of chaos continued all around us. People were running past, tires were squealing, and emergency vehicles could be heard all over. She mumbled something under her breath and turned to reach into her purse. I quickly walked over and looked inside the baby stroller. There was no baby in there. Only boxes of Sudafed, bottles of nail polish, and other common ingredients to make crystal meth. She pulled out a switchblade from her purse and screamed, Look, I'll cut you up good, and swung the blade at me. I grabbed the baby stroller and shoved it away and pulled out my gun. She looked on as the stroller rocketed into the curb and fell over, emptying all the contents onto the street and down the sewer drain. She emitted an unholy scream, so loud and shrill that I honestly thought her lungs were going to explode. She ran away from me as I took off after her. Don't know why I did. Maybe it was just instinct, or maybe it was because she pulled a knife on me. I made it a block before I lost sight of her. It took a second to get my bearings and saw that I was at the grocery store. It was early morning. The doors were smashed and people were running in and out, mostly carrying food, clothing, and baby formula. Every now and then someone with nothing but alcohol or a flat TV screen would run out. I walked inside and watched the frazzled people loading up shopping carts with supplies and running out. I heard a faint whisper that sounded terrified, calling my name. I looked over the front of the counter and saw Lisa. Her right eye was swollen shut. The cash register that normally sat at the service counter was ripped right out of the counter. All the cigarettes they kept on the shelves were gone. Oh my God, Lisa, what's going on? I asked. I don't know, Tenny. Everything was fine this morning. I was a little busier than normal. The last hour or so we had lines around the store with people ready to check out. One person got mad and pushed past without paying, and everyone else followed. Now it's just a madhouse. I called the police an hour ago, but no one's shown up. Now everyone is just looting. I don't know what to do, Lisa said with tears streaming down her cheeks. I took a second to think and came up with a quick idea. Not really sure if it would work. Hey, does the store's PA system still work? I asked as I made my way over to the microphone stand. She nodded her head yes. I grabbed the microphone and hit the store-wide announcement button. I leaned over to Lisa and said, Darling, you might want to cover your ears for this next part. As she did so, I pulled out my service pistol and fired 2 rounds into the air, causing everyone to freeze in place. I spoke into the microphone. Attention shoppers. Attention shoppers. The police are here and shooting looters. Drop what you have now and leave or you will be killed. That is all. As if everyone had the same idea at once, the sounds of things hitting the floor could be heard, followed by feet slapping the floor. 40 or more people ran out of the store at lightning speed. After everyone was out of the store, Lisa and I walked around. We found one of the employees hiding behind the meat counter and a pharmacy tech hiding in the break room. We were just about to finish sweeping the back storage room when we all heard a wet smacking sound accompanied by groans and moans coming from a janitor closet. I opened the door to the closet and saw the two topless teenagers, a boy and a girl, frantically sucking face with each other like it was the end of the world. Lisa yelled, "Stephen and Elizabeth, oh my word!" Panicked, the two stopped and frantically looked for their shirts. The four adults, myself included, tried our best to keep the smirk off our faces. After everyone was properly clothed and ready, I told the group, "I'm heading to the police headquarters building. It should be safe there." They all agreed and wanted to come with me. None of them had a car, so we'd have to go on foot. Lisa told everyone to grab a backpack from the school supplies section and put a few cans of food, bottled water, and first aid kit, along with a bat from the sporting goods section in their bag. After everyone was ready and relatively armed, we set off. We made it a few blocks when we came across a car smashed into a building. There was a person pinned between the car's bumper and the brick building. The person was moaning and trying to reach for us. A snap and cracking sound was heard as the person broke free and landed on the ground. He started crawling his way towards us, organs and guts falling out as he continued to crawl our way. Someone in the group said, "How's that possible? Are they still alive?" I replied with, "I don't know." Then I raised my pistol and fired 2 rounds, one into the shoulder and one in the heart. This thing didn't seem to notice or care that it had been shot. Stephen piped up, still a little embarrassed after getting caught trying to get to second base. "Dude, haven't you played Left 4 Dead before? Look, they're the undead, zombies. You have to shoot them in the head to kill them, unless they are the return of the living dead zombies, in which case you need to burn them." I raised my pistol up and fired 1 round into his head. The creature stopped moving and laid still on the road. Stephen then said, "Hey, what did I tell you? Okay, I'm dead." Suddenly there was a mix of emergency sirens and a loud crash. I looked up 2 blocks and saw a police car flip upside down and an ambulance crashing into a glass storefront. I yelled to the group and took off running while the others struggled to keep up with me. When I got to the intersection, I saw that the cop car said Bear Creek County Sheriff on the side. I need to check on the officer to see if they're okay. I used to work for Bear Creek before I transferred to Sunburst PD. I crawled into the driver's side window that was broken by the impact and immediately recognized the deputy despite him being in full riot gear. The AM/FM radio was on in the cruiser and the robotic voice of the emergency alert system was repeating a message. I undid Alex's seatbelt and started to get him out of the cruiser and somewhere to safety. I looked around and saw a hotel. That's better than nothing, I thought, and started to drag Deputy Alex across the pavement. I noticed 3 zombies coming out of a building near me. I pulled my pistol out, shot all 3 of them, reholstered, and bent down to continue dragging when I saw Alex's eyelids flutter a little. Lisa ran up to me and grabbed Alex's other arm. I leaned in and said, "Easy, Alex. We'll get you to safety." Together we dragged him over to the hotel. The sound of his riot helmet scraping against the pavement was unsettling. I saw the back door to the ambulance open up, and a person in an EMT uniform got out, followed by a female. We reached the doors to the hotel. I tried to open them, but they were locked. There was a security guard standing nearby. I told him I was a cop, but he still refused to unlock the door. The female from the ambulance ran up, pointed a pistol at the kid behind the glass and yelled, "Open these doors right now, or I will break the glass and then no one is safe." And I thought to myself, damn, why didn't I think of that? She then said, "Peter, help him get the deputy inside." Peter, the EMT, and I got Alex into the lobby of the hotel. Peter stayed behind to check on Alex. I ran over to the female and showed her my badge, Officer Tenney. She pulled her badge from her belt and said, "Detective Talon, Homicide Unit." I saw the others from the grocery store running towards us, but the undead were closing in on all of us. I ran out to cover the group, diving into the overturned squad car. I quickly came out with Alex's patrol rifle and started shooting. With no additional magazines for the rifle, it quickly ran out of ammo and I discarded it onto the ground. There might have been more ammo for it in the squad car, but there was no time to look. I yelled, "In here! It's safe here!" I shot my pistol dry, but more of the undead were coming. I ran back into the hotel and up to Alex, pulling the 2 magazines he had on his duty belt. "Hey, buddy," I said. "I'm going to need these." Alex moved a little and his hand lazily went to his pistol in the holster. "Don't worry, Alex. You'll get to keep that." I shot and shot and shot until I used up both magazines that I'd taken from Alex, thinning the onslaught of the undead until there were none left. I ran back into the hotel and looked at the security guard. He locked the door. Detective Talon and Peter grabbed Deputy Alex, picked him up, and took him into the elevator, pressing the button for the 5th floor. Chapter 8. Deputy Alex. Well, damn, is all I could say. Tanny put his hands in his pocket and said, "Yep." Talon went to stand up but collapsed to the floor. "Shit," Peter said. "Yeah, she's losing blood. She needs plasma fast. Blood would be better, but I don't know her blood type." "Hey, any in your ambulance?" I asked Peter. He shook his head, no. We used it up trying to save our partner. Tanny stepped up and said, "Guessing the only place to get some is in a hospital. But that's also a place we do not want to go." Peter shook his head no and said, "Actually, there's a fire station nearby that might have some." Tanny jumped in. "Bullcrap. There's no fire station in the tourist district. I've responded to enough drunken fights and car accidents there. The closest station's on Walnut Street. It's at least a 30-minute walk from here." Peter put up a hand to stop Tanny. "Now, let me rephrase. It's the closest unmanned station. It's an old fire station they closed down and is now used as an auxiliary storage unit. It's mostly used for specialized equipment like hazmat trucks and brush trucks. It's also where we store the rescue boat for winter. We even had a helicopter landing pad for the air ambulance. Not to mention we use it as a resupply point for all our ambulances and fire trucks." Well, I cut in. "So, will there be plasma there?" "No doubt. I bet no one would have looted it. Looks like a warehouse only about 4 blocks from here if we cut through the park." "Oh, what about physical security?" Tanny asked. Peter replied, "Riot shutters. They look like heavy-duty garage doors that protect both first-floor doors and windows and second-floor windows when closed. Also has a fenced-in parking lot." Tanny raised an eyebrow and asked, "Overpressured, CBRN and PFBL?" "Yeah, that's correct," Peter said. I was confused as hell and spoke up. "Hey, can we stop talking in alphabet soup language?" Tanny and Peter laughed a little. "It's just a fancy way of saying it's safe," Tanny said. "Well, if we're going to do something, let's do it quickly. The sun's going to be going down soon and I don't want to move at night in the open," I replied. Tanny stood up on the small coffee table and began speaking to everyone in the room. "Everyone listen. Listen up. We need to get Detective Talon some medical treatment. Suffice to say, hospitals are a no-go. And there's a fire station 4 blocks from here." Tanny turned to look at Peter, who nodded his head yes. "Yeah, 4 blocks from here. Be a much better location to stay safe. Deputy Alex and myself will not force you to leave, but we are both going. We were leaving in 5 minutes." A lady ran up to me. I could see the anger in her eyes. "I'm not going anywhere." "That's fine, lady. Like Officer Tanny said, no one is making you." "Yeah, but you need to help us," she said, poking her fingers into my chest. I was trying to keep my professionalism, but it was getting harder to do so. She was targeting me because I was in uniform. "What would you like me to do?" She replied in a stern tone. "You are the police. You're supposed to protect us." It was then that I lost my cool. "Lady, one fucking cop who was 10 minutes away from clocking out when all this shit happened. This is not some PDA meeting where the louder voice gets heard. There are 2 options. 1, you come with us, or 2, don't come with us." The lady, who was steaming mad at this point, yelled, "I want your name and badge number. I'm going to be filing a complaint and speaking to your supervisor." Well, I started to laugh at her. I put my arm around her and walked her to the window. In a scarily calm voice, I said, "My supervisor's down there somewhere, shambling around with all the dead. But please go find him and tell him I hurt your feelings." Then he put a hand on my shoulder. "Come on, man, let's go." Our small group, consisting of myself, Tenny, Peter, 5 people from the grocery store, 2 of which were carrying Detective Talon, got into the elevator and rode down to the ground floor. Tenny and Peter ran over to the ambulance and quickly got a folding stretcher out and raced back. Tenny dropped 2 of the zombies on his way back. He quickly got Talon onto the stretcher. At every intersection, I would peek my head out to make sure it was cleared. Tenny would dash across the street to secure the other side, and then the group would go across with me in the rear. We crossed the park with no problem. The occasional shouting and squealing of tires could be heard. The air smelled of structure fires. In the parking lot of the park, a school bus that said Sunshine Daycare was parked. The front windshield was covered in blood. Little, bloody hands began slapping at the windows of the bus, and the doors began shaking. I looked at Tenny, and his look mirrored mine. No one wanted to deal with undead children. We left the bus alone and made it 1 more block up. The sun had just about dipped below the horizon now. We all saw the red and blue lights of several emergency vehicles. This gave the group hope that maybe this would be a safe place after all. Then he approached the group as we all jogged towards the lights of salvation. "In the event of most radio communication, all SBPD officers on duty have to report to the fire station or police department, whichever one is closest to them. Clearly, some of my colleagues knew about this place and did not tell anyone." A cheer rang out amongst the group as we rounded the corner to see 4 SBPD squad cars sitting there in front of the firehouse. All of them were parked in different angles and directions. Doors had been flung open and brass casing lay around blackened, colored stains. The emergency lights that were flashing caused all the shadows to jump around. We had the group stay back as Tenny and I cleared the building. Peter gave us a rough layout from memory and we entered. The vehicle bays were all empty, with the garage doors open. Even the boat and trailer were gone. There was 1 door on the left and 1 door on the right. Also on the right side was an old brass fireman's pole. We went left. The room we entered was, as Peter had said, a big warehouse. Shelves lined the walls in the center of the room, complete with portable oxygen tanks, gauze, hemorrhage control, and other equipment and devices. There was a pallet of cardboard boxes with a crescent moon symbol on the side, along with a bunch of bottled water. I noticed a small walk-in freezer with a plastic seal on the door. The label on the door said plasma. The warehouse was cleared, and we continued to the right side. The ground floor had 2 small offices and a break room. At the far back was a locker room where we heard the sound of running water. When we walked into the open bay shower, there was steam everywhere. We found 3 firefighters, 2 in full bunker gear with their oxygen tanks on. One had a red and silver fire axe sticking out of their back. Their full-face respirator was hanging on the ground. The last firefighter was in a green hazmat suit. The suit was fully inflated and he was trying to bite through the plastic window on the suit. A small female lay on the ground. Her dark blue uniform was unmistakably a police uniform. Her legs were missing all the way to the knees, and she had an empty pistol in her hand. Blood leaked from a single hole in her head. The red mixed with a shower of water as it swirled down the drain. Tenny and I each shot 2 times and all 3 figures dropped. Tenny started kicking one of the now twice dead corpses. I grabbed him. "Chill, man. Hold it together." He looked at me and said, "She wasn't even a cop. That's our police cadet's uniform. Things must have gotten so bad that we sent them out before graduation. Look at her duty belt. Just a holster, nothing else." Sure enough, it said police cadet on her shoulder patch. "Tenny, we still have to clear the rest of the building." He nodded as we made our way up to the 2nd floor. The smell of old, musty bed sheets hit us 2 steps from the top. He opened the door with a loud creak. It was pitch black. I activated my pistol-mounted light and shone it around. It was a big room with about 24 beds and several doors. Opening the doors, we saw that it was either single or double bedrooms. Beyond that was a kitchen and pantry. All the cabinets were bare. A washer and dryer were off to one side. "Oh, looks like the room's cleared," Tenny said. "Yep, it appears so." Tenny's eyes flickered over to the fireman pole that led to the garage below, and he cracked a grin. "Yeah, you thinking what I'm thinking?" I asked. Before I could finish, I heard a "woo!" Tenny slid down the pole. I followed him, making the similar sound as we slid down the 12-foot pole. We signaled for everyone to come over. The place still had power running to it. Tenny and I turned off the emergency light in the squad car. Peter and the group got Talon into a bed and immediately got a bag of plasma and hooked her up to the IV. Lisa and another employee went to take care of the 4 bodies in the shower. Tenny closed the garage door and the riot shutters. With Talon sedated, Peter, the pharmacist tech, and I went into the warehouse to see what kind of medication they had on hand. "Peter, I gotta ask. I saw a pallet of MREs and a pallet of water. What's up with that?" Peter turned to the pharmacy tech and rattled off a bunch of medication names that they'd need. Then he addressed my question. "Well, this building, besides being a resupply point and storage area for the fire department, holds enough supplies to keep the city operational in case of a natural disaster for up to 3 days. After that, outside resources should arrive." "That's interesting. Didn't know that," I said. "Yep, most people don't," Peter replied. I walked out of the warehouse and up to the 2nd floor where I heard Tenny's frustrated voice. "Oh, come on, man." I found him in a small room crammed full of radio gear. I leaned against the doorframe and asked, "What's going on?" He turned in the swivel chair to look at me. "Nothing, Alex, and I mean nothing on the 2-way radio from low frequency to HF, civilian band, police, military, county to county, ground to air, local to state, even ham radio frequency. I've tried everything in between, and there's nothing. Someone is jamming every radio frequency on the spectrum." Then he flipped a few switches and turned knobs and then pointed to the small digital display. It read 34.90. Tenny went on. "This is the National Guard radio frequency." Tenny spoke into the radio handset. "Sierra Bravo, 4210, to anyone on this frequency, please respond." He turned to look at me. "See, nothing, Alex." Switched over to several other channels. 47.42, 52.525, 138.225, 156.80, and repeated the message. He looked at me again and said, "See, nothing, except for here. This is where it gets weird." He moved the dial on the radio and the screen displayed 162.40. Static filled the speakers. "So what? Every radio you've tried is full of static," I said. "Yeah," Tenny replied. "But this is a common radio frequency for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA. You know, the weather radios you can buy at any big box store. Well, this is the frequency they use. They're jamming the damn weather channel. Someone really does not want any information going in or coming out of Sunburst." I looked at him, and my mind was made up. "Tenny, I need to get out of here. I need to get out of the city and find Erica. No one knows if this is an isolated event or if it's spread all over the county or state. You said everyone was falling back to police HQ. I'm going to head there, try and find information about this. I'll swim across the Cook River if I have to. Hey, I'm coming too. Someone has to keep your ass alive out there." The 2 of us found Peter and the rest of the group and talked to them about it. "Everyone, Deputy Alex and I are going to head to the police headquarters to try and find information about what's going on and to check in with our chain of command. If we can have everyone write down their information on this paper, that I'm going to pass around, then we'll let the people in charge know who's here and try to get help sent. Might even be able to get a medical evacuation for Detective Talon. Peter will be staying behind to look after her. We're not leaving you undefended. We're leaving Talon's service pistol here for you guys. Now there are exactly 8 bullets left. Alex and I will also have 8 bullets left. We'll move the squad cars minus the one we're taking to the inside of the building. Should you have to leave, use them. The keys will be on the front seat. Right, any questions? Everyone shook their heads no. Before we left, we tactically acquired a box of MREs and a case of water. Tenny and I walked out of the fire station and started moving the squad cars inside the empty garage. So, Alex, what car are we fancying today? Tenny asked. With 3 Crown Vics and 1 new police SUV. Well, I've got my eye on that new SUV, I said. Police SUV was dark blue. Sunburst Police was painted in white along the side with the city's crests behind it. The words traffic units were written below that near the bottom of the door. A license plate reader was mounted just below the light bar. A push bar was mounted to the front bumper and an antenna of all sizes was fastened to the roof. We said our goodbyes and left the fire station. I drove and Tenny rode shotgun, giving me directions on where to go. We made it 6 blocks when I saw a face in my rearview mirror. I yelled. What the heck? Slammed on the brakes, the wheels screeching to a halt. A loud thump echoed off the prisoner cage in the back. Tenny looked at me and said, "Hey, what was that?" We both turned around to see a dead guy in the back seat. He was handcuffed and trying to bite through the plexiglass window separating us. Tenny said, "Oh, snap, I know this guy." "You know this guy?" "Yeah," Tenny replied. "I know this guy. It's Tony. Oh, I saw him this morning and..." His sentence trailed off to a stop. I gave him a questioning look. Tenny continued as the realization became evident. Yeah. God, he might even have been a zombie when I talked to him this morning. Tony let out an from the back seat of the squad car. "Tenny, we can't just have a dead guy in the back of our car. Not after the last time." Tenny raised his hands in mock surrender. Okay, just roll down the back window and I'll take care of it," he said. I rolled down the windows as Tenny stepped out. "So, what's the plan here? Even with the windows down, you still have the window cage in the..." Single shot rang out. Tony's body went limp in the back seat. Tenny reholstered his pistol and hopped back into the passenger seat. He smacked the dash twice and said, "Okay, let's go." I rolled my eyes at him, got out and made my way to the trunk of the car. I began rummaging around. Road flares, kitty litter, traffic cones. Here it is, I said while reaching for the bottle of bleach and rubber gloves. I donned the gloves and started pulling the now twice dead Tony out of the squad car. Then he got out and asked, "What are you doing?" I looked at him as I lifted Tony out of the car. "I'm working on my deadlift." Tenny let out a sarcastic laugh at this. I started pouring the small bottle of bleach onto the hard plastic seats. As I was pouring the harsh-smelling cleaning agent onto the footwell, I noticed something. "Hey man, come here for a second and look at this." What is it?" Tenny asked as he made his way over to my side of the squad car. I pointed to the floor of the prison cage. "Look, this one solid plastic piece, which means..." But Tenny finished the sentence for me. "When John Doe gets drunk and blows chunks in the back seat, it will no longer slosh its way under the driver's seat and onto my shoes." I nodded my head and replied, "Exactly, and look at this too." I pulled up on a small metal ring no bigger than a keychain ring. Instantly, the liquid bleach started spilling out from under the car. "Oh, it has a drain. Oh, Ford Motor Company, you do know how to make a squad car." We both got in and started driving down the road. Tenny and I talked about how nice it would be when we get these new SUVs for normal duties. For the next few moments, I forgot about the zombie apocalypse going on, or just people talking about work. Chapter 9. Highway to Hell. Right, take the outer ring highway. It's only a 20-minute drive to police headquarters from here, Tanny said as he pointed for me to take the on-ramp. I made a right and got up to the top of the on-ramp only to be stopped by a line of cars that stretched as far as the eye could see. Well, now what? The road's blocked. Well, Alex, roads work in both directions. Just drive on the other side of the highway, see? He said while pointing. It's clear. No traffic or accidents. Wouldn't that take twice as long looping around the whole city? I asked. Not if you drive against the traffic, Tenny replied. I went red in the face and admitted I didn't even think about doing that. I drove down the ramp, made a turn and started going up the exit ramp. I activated the police car's takedown lights on the light bar, along with the emergency lights and the high beams. This would illuminate anything in front of us for a good distance out and warn any oncoming motorists. I was driving 45 miles an hour. Then he leaned over the center console and said, Hey, Grandma, speed limit's 70. Let's pick up the speed. Well, excuse me for wanting to be safe as we do something incredibly dangerous, I replied. What'll happen if we hit an oncoming driver? Then he gestured with his hand out of the window and said, What driver? Everyone's dead. We then drove in silence. The only sound was the SUV's wheels on the roadway. The tension was high in the squad car. Tenny spoke. Hey, Alex, does that deputy, forget his name, one who had the devil on night watch, still work there? I shook my head no and said, He transferred back to Texas shortly after you left. Okay, Tenny said, and turned to look out the passenger window. It was my turn to speak up now. Hey, Tenny, you know who would absolutely love what's happening right now? No. Who? Remember a few years back that we had that in-service training with the other departments, and we all went out drinking after. I looked over to see Tenny start to crack a grin. I continued. Yeah, that female deputy who told us her whole job is to babysit the gas station at the edge of town. All those weird stories she told us after pounding back those shots. Now this would be a normal day for her. We both let out a laugh. Then he pointed at all the cars on the other side of the highway and said, Man, so many cars. People are either trying to escape or just trying to get home. Didn't help that this all took off around rush hour. Yeah, that's for sure. This highway's notorious for traffic backups on a good day, I replied. Then he shone the police car passenger spotlight on all the cars parked bumper to bumper. A lot of the cars had their doors open, with the driver no longer there. Some of the windows were smashed while others had zombies still stuck in the car with seatbelts on. A few even had the insides covered with blood as if a red can of paint had exploded. You know what this reminds me of with all these cars? Tenny asked. Not a clue. Remember when we got called in early to assess the neighboring county because of those chemicals that leaked into the town's drinking water? Everyone who drank it was hallucinating that monsters in purple fog were out to get them. I was in the middle of taking a drink of water and almost choked on it. I nodded my head yes and said, Yeah, and we had to put that tiny town on lockdown. Good times indeed. I looked over and saw spotlights illuminating a fenced yard with guard towers. I pointed and said, Well, if worse comes to worse, we can always hole up in the prison. Tenny looked at me and said, Yeah, Prison of the Undead sounds like a winner to me. Then he went back to looking out his window. You know what's weird? Besides the undead, the electricity in some parts of the city is still on, but in other parts it's not. He pointed to an area that was completely dark. Some places the power's just out. I mean, maybe someone took out a utility pole, but, well, You'd think they'd have systems in place. Stop the car, Alex, stop the car. I slammed on the brakes so fast that the squad car's ABS kicked in. You hear that, Alex? Tenny asked me. I rolled down my window and listened to the distant sound. I looked around and saw the flashing anti-collision lights on top of a roof close to downtown. There's a helicopter at 2 o'clock in that section of the building with no power, I answered. The helicopter started to slowly lift off into the air and head toward us. Tenny and I both got out of the cruiser and continued watching as the chopper headed our way. Tenny looked at me and said, "Pop the trunk. I'm going to try signal it with some road flares. Maybe it'll be our ticket out of here." A few seconds later, Tenny came back to the front of the squad car with a flare in each hand and set them off, waving them back and forth to get the pilot's attention. The helicopter flew right in front of us. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a fast-moving dart with a long flaming tail smack into the top of the helicopter and explode. The chopper went into a fireball and fell to the earth, hitting the elevated highway in front of us and collapsing the roadway. Half a second after the crash, we heard the sound of a jet flying overhead. I saw the glow of 2 engines banking hard to the left. "Well, screw me. Did the military just shoot down a helicopter?" Tenny shouted. "Yeah, it would appear so." We both walked to the edge of the hole in the highway. I continued on. Right, let me guess. Turned on my flashlight and shone it. There was the ramp only a few hundred feet away on the other side of the 50-foot hole. That's our exit we need to take to get to the HQ building. Tenny just nodded his head yes. I let out a growl and we started walking back to the car. We got in, turned around and headed to the last ramp off a few miles back. Tenny got the CAD opened and went through things on it. "Hey, get this. There are 97 911 calls pending right now. Also, make a left here," Tenny said. "Is there anyone logged in? Can you send messages on point-to-point?" I asked. Point-to-point is the messaging program that officers use to send messages from squad computer to squad computer. No one's on. The network's down. Go up 2 blocks and make a right." "Well, what are some of the calls?" I asked. Tenny started typing on the CAD. Let's see. Assault in progress. Home invasion. Car accident. Car theft. Home invasion. "Oh, no frickin' way," Tenny shouted. What? What is it?" Tenny looked up. "Make a left and keep going on straight. A person in the middle of a complete societal breakdown called 911 to report his neighbor's grass is over 7 inches long, and then it violates the city ordinance." Tenny sighed out loud and then said, "God, there's always one." "Hey, Tenny, the helicopter crash is right in front of us. Am I going right or left?" Tenny looked up. The squad car's laptop was telling us to turn left. He then turned on the spotlight and shone it on the still burning wreck of the helicopter. It was brown with gold colors. The logo on the side said GON. The pilot was dead, hanging half out of the cockpit with his headset dangling around his neck and a pool of blood on the ground below him. Tenny looked at me and said, "I figured it was the GON traffic chopper. Not many helicopters fly around the city." We continued on, reaching the main avenue that was a straight shot to the police headquarters building. We were in a traffic jam like no other. Cars were flipped over and a fire truck with its lights on, slow rotation lay on its side. Fire hoses and other equipment were hanging out of it like organs from a great beast. A semi-truck carrying live cows jackknifed the trailer and rocked back and forth violently. Desperate moves from the cows inside could be heard as hundreds of zombies surrounded the trailer, reaching into the slots and banging the sides. But the squad got into reverse and left the area. Tenny directed me down a few side streets and we quickly arrived at a large gate blocking a driveway. Tenny got out typed in a code and the gates started to open. Once he got back into the car, I asked, "How do you know about the code to this gate?" "Oh, this is my apartment complex. I'm the 4th building on the ground floor," he answered. We stopping at your place?" "Yeah," Tenny said. "Got to pick up a few things and I need to use the bathroom. You know everyone likes a home field advantage." While Tenny was inside doing his business, I started flipping through radio stations. I kept getting the same robotic EAS message. "Stay inside. Lock all of your doors and windows. Turn off all heating and ventilation systems. Remain quiet. Stay tuned for further details." I had the window of the squad car rolled down, trying to soak in the cool night air. My eyelids started to feel heavy. It wasn't until we stopped in a relatively safe area that I got a minute to soak in all that had happened. The clock on the dash read 1:23 a.m. Tenny walked out with a plastic bag in one hand and got in the passenger seat. "Hey buddy, got you something," he said. Tenny reached in and pulled out a bag of beef jerky, a can of Rippet, and a box of bullets. I greedily grabbed the ammo from him. I counted 20 rounds left in the box. I forgot I had some ammo left after my last pistol recoil day. They're FMJ and technically not supposed to be used on duty, only for training, but I figured we could just ignore that policy today. 10 for you, 10 for me. That'll make 1 full mag each and 1 magazine with only 2 rounds in it. You must be tired after working the 2nd shift. Go ahead and have this Rippet. I took the energy drink, cracked it open, and took a long gulp, instantly feeling a surge of energy like my body had just got a jump start. "Geez, this has got a kick to it," I said. Then he just laughed and said, "Yeah, never underestimate the power of Rippet." "So, what's the plan from here?" "We'll cut through the apartment complex and onto the other side. Across the street is a cemetery. We'll drive through and that'll get us about 2 blocks from City Hall, Police HQ, Fire HQ, and the courthouse. And they're all in one building. We'll get in and be safe." "Well, sounds like a good plan to me," I said as I slammed the rest of the Rippet can down. We made it halfway through the complex when a lone zombie wearing a badly stained and wrinkled uniform shambled its way into the middle of the parking lot. It was about 50 yards away when it let out and started to walk towards us. "Hey, it's Leo," Tenny said with a mouthful of beef jerky. "Friend of yours?" I asked. "Nah, he's an asshole." Then there was a long pause. "Oh, I'm gonna shoot him." Tenny unholstered his pistol and opened the passenger side door. I grabbed his shirt and pulled him back in. "Hey, I've got a better idea," I said with a smirk. "I don't like that look you've got," Tenny replied. "Well, Tenny, this squad car has a ram bar on it. Might as well use it." "Alex, it's a push bar, not a ram bar. Second, you know that just because you have it doesn't mean you need to use it." I rapidly replied, "Oh yes, it does." I put my foot to the floor. The squad car engine roared as it picked up speed to 45 miles an hour before hitting Leo with a loud gut-turning snap as the lower part of the push bar made contact with both kneecaps, instantly shattering them. Leo's head made contact with the hood of the squad car with a thump sound, denting the front. "Oh, damn it, Alex, you dented the hood. God, you're an ass," Tenny said as he got out of the car. A few seconds later, the sound of plastic hitting concrete at a high velocity could be heard, and Tenny yelled out, "Are you freaking kidding me?" I sprang out of the cop car, pistol already out of the holster, and saw Tenny kicking the now twice-dead body of Leo. Then he turned to look at me and said, "This guy was an ass from day one. He'd always come into a situation half-cocked, and if things turned south on him, he'd put his hand on his revolver like he was going to draw and shoot. I can't even count how many people tried to get him fired for being an idiot." Tenny pointed to something and smashed it into several pieces on the ground. Turns out that revolver was just a starting pistol. The barrel was plugged and he didn't even have bullets for it. My can't even tell you how many times Dave and I would... And Tenny stopped mid-sentence. "You okay?" I asked. Tenny nodded his head. "Yeah, man, yeah, I'm good. I just hope Dave made it out of the city." We made it through the apartment complex. Tenny directed me to drive across the street and through the cemetery. The gate was open, and a stone arch above the gate read, "Resurrection Cemetery." Down the road and to the left stood a 2-story warehouse building that overlooked the cemetery. A sun-bleached, dirt-covered sign was on the roof. The lettering was faded, and the lights illuminating the sign were flickering, but I could just make out the words, "You need a medical supply." We went through the gates of the cemetery. I was uneasy, but Tenny helped reassure me. "Anyone who's buried here is 6 feet underground and is not getting out. Yeah, and even if they did get out, they're probably left to eat brains." I laughed at this. In the back parking lot of the medical supply building, 2 ambulances were parked in the parking lot. One had the rear doors open, and the other had its emergency lights on. A cop car sat parked in the parking lot. There had to be about 30 of the undead feeding on 6 different bodies. We continued through the cemetery at the bottom of a small hill. A blue 1967 Pontiac Le Mans was rammed into a tree. A female driver with long blonde hair slumped over the steering wheel, unmoving. The road twisted and turned through the cemetery, but eventually we came out onto the other side of the road. We made it 2 blocks until we were stopped. This time it wasn't due to car crashes or traffic backups, but instead by 3 concrete jersey barriers placed along the road. Behind that was a city snowplow. The plow was lowered to the ground, and the wing plows on each side of the truck lowered as well, blocking off the roadway and all of the sidewalk. 2 road signs next to the concrete barriers read, "Road closed." I looked at Tenny and asked, "What do you make of this?" He looked at me, shrugged his shoulders and said, "Frankly, I don't know. Normally with something like this," he pointed to the city snowplow, clearly put there to block access, "it'd be done when a visiting dignitary, head of state, or the President of the United States comes. Closing off avenues of approach creates what would be the only way in and out for the general public. Also normally be manned with a handful of police officers to stop people from doing what we're about to do, just crawl over the barrier and walk in." Tenny and I got out of the squad car. I turned the car off so we wouldn't be wasting gas. I then locked it and pocketed the keys. We easily went over the snowplow wings. As we walked, Tenny explained that this part of the city was the old downtown. That's why all the shops share a wall and the facade of each building is all brick. Right before we reached the city hall square, 2 cop cars parked nose to nose blocked the way. We could hear the rumbling of generators and see powerful spotlights illuminating a city park with white tents dotting the area. We both slid over the hood of the cruiser and walked not into safety, but instead to the aftermath of some battle that had taken place. Chapter 10. Overrun. We started walking towards the City Hall building. The area we were in took up 4 square city blocks, with City Hall, the police, and fire headquarters, along with the courthouse taking up the center. A big white inflatable tent with a red cross on it was erected in the middle of City Hall Park. We entered the tent from one of the side doors and walked inside to see desks that were flipped over and papers laying all over the place. It was as if everyone just got up and left in a hurry. There was a large water, coffee, and tea dispenser in one corner, along with some styrofoam cups. A torn Red Cross vest lay over the back of a folding chair. We made our way to the front of the tent. Plastic orange pylons with police tape hung between them stretched from the tent to some sort of medical area. We walked down there to see 6 mobile medical buses parked next to each other, with thick black cables snaking out of them, all leading to a portable generator. Several police cars with their lights flashing were in a parking lot next to the medical area, and traffic cones were laid out to create a travel lane in the parking lot. School buses with handwritten lettering in the front windows read, "Evacuation Bus." The buses were idling nearby as if they were ready to whisk people to safety or to bring them in from danger. 2 city buses along with city construction vehicles blocked the roadway into the City Hall Park. A low, the distant thumps of hands slapping the side of the bus could be heard. Looking back towards City Hall, I noticed that there was temporary fencing, roughly 7 feet high and topped with razor wire stretching along the back side of City Hall. It ran from one end of the street around City Hall to the other end of the street. As we got closer, heavy concrete blocks held the fencing in place. Tenny was able to find a section of fence that was acting as a gate with a set of handcuffs as the lock. Using his handcuff key, we pushed open the gate and closed it behind us, locking it back up with the handcuffs. We made our way to the front of City Hall. If the backside looked like the humanitarian rescue effort, the front of the building looked like a war zone. Mounds of bodies lay on one side with city dump trucks in a line waiting to get filled with more. Heavy earth-moving equipment, some owned by the city and some painted army green, was sitting around abandoned. There was evidence as a bulldozer that was now stationary had a pile of bodies in front of its blade and was ready to push it into the larger pile. I was left speechless by this carnage. Unlike all the other roads that blocked the main road, a 4-lane avenue that led to the front of City Hall was wide open. Concrete barriers were set up in a way to direct traffic to head towards a vehicle gate, which led to the back side of City Hall. Looks like that's how people were going to be brought in, Tenny said. Bodies lay all over the avenue. Flashing lights from emergency vehicles blocked every side street on the avenue. Brass casings, empty rifle and pistol magazines, along with discarded weapons, lay all around. I picked up the dropped M4 with an underslung grenade launcher. Tenny looked at me with speculation. The weapon felt damp. I opened up the underslung grenade launcher and a 40mm empty casing dropped out. I picked it up off the ground and my eyes went wide. This was not a 40mm smoke or gas round, but a fragmentation round. I felt queasy, my head swimming. "Hey, what's wrong, brother?" Tenny asked. "Tenny, how bad did things get here when they started popping off grenades?" "I don't know, man. I don't know," he replied as he put his hand on my shoulder. I let the M4 clatter to the ground. My hands came back dark red with blood. I wiped it off the best I could on the grass and continued on. A tan 8-wheeled truck with the word Oshkosh written on the front, with a large fuel tank on the back, was parked next to a portable generator that was hooked into City Hall and was running dozens of floodlights in the area. Bodies lay on the ground everywhere around City Hall. The closer we got to the steps, the more we noticed dead bodies in police and digital camo uniforms. 2 Humvees with mounted .50 caliber machine guns on their roofs were parked behind a row of concrete jersey barricades. Piles of .50 caliber brass casings lay all over the hood and ground around the Humvees, and dozens on top of dozens of empty ammo cans lay beside them. On the steps leading to the main doors of City Hall were sandbags that covered the front steps. 2 belt-fed machine guns lay abandoned on top of the sandbag wall. Their barrels blown out of the overheating brass and disintegration links lay everywhere. The doors to City Hall were smashed off the hinges and the glass in the doorframe was broken. Benches, chairs, and office furniture lay in a mountain in front of us, blocking off access at the end of the hallway to the main building. Only the security checkpoint was still open. Tenny walked behind the desk at the security station and waved his wallet in front of the card reader attached to the door. The light went green. We both stepped in, bypassing the last desperate attempt to keep the dead out. We emerged from the backside of the security room and into the main corridor of City Hall behind the makeshift barricade. National Guardsmen, police, and other city employees lay everywhere. Dark red and black blood coated the floor and parts of the walls. Metal police batons and combat knives lay on the ground. Tenny spoke. "Damn, dude. These guys were fighting hand to hand near the end. All these bodies in this close of a space. No thank you." All the lights were on in the building, and that made it all the more creepy. It gave off this vibe like everything's normal. Just ignore the dead bodies on the floor. We made our way down one of the hallways to a blue sign that said Police Headquarters. Both saw movement in the door across the hallway. Media Relations Room is what the sign said. A small glass window inside the door showed 5 TV cameras on their side, each with their own brightly colored logo displayed on the camera. Journalists, cameramen, and a few cops were inside, all shambling around and clearly dead. A small wooden podium was on its side. In the background was a large city crest with American flags on each side that were smeared in blood. We made a note of it, but headed inside to the police headquarters building, hoping to find someone in charge or away. Behind the bullet-resistant glass, 3 zombies with blue police record keeper shirts were banging against it. I looked at Tanny and said, "Well, aren't we off to just a banger of a start?" I got a short laugh for this. The second floor was the 911 dispatch center. The same fate awaited our dispatchers. All of them were zombies walking around with their headsets still on their head. Unfortunately, this room was behind glass and afforded us the luxury of not having to go in there. The 4th floor had a few interview rooms, and floor 5 was all offices. The interview rooms were all empty and the office doors were all locked. Tenny and I didn't feel like spending a lot of time kicking in doors, so we continued on. We arrived on the rooftop where the helicopter pad was located. Dozens of bodies lay all around us. Tenny walked over to an air conditioning unit and said, "Hey, there's a TV camera here and it's still recording." "Well, that's nice, man, but can we just get off the roof and figure out our next move? Maybe the marina still has some boats. We can get one and get to the other side of the Cook River," I replied as we started making our way back down. Tenny went into one of the interview rooms with a TV in it. This TV was mainly to show people that they got you on camera doing the crime. Tenny started to mess with the camera and hooked it up to the TV. "What are you doing? We need to get out of here. This place gives me the creeps." Tenny waved his hand at me in a "just 1 minute" motion and said, "Yeah, I just want to see what's on this camera. Maybe it'll give us some clues on where everyone is." "Yeah, Tenny, I know where everyone is. They're dead and walking around. Now, can we just go?" I begged. "Hold on. Yeah, I got it," Tenny said as the TV screen went from blue to video. This is what was on the camera. Chapter 11. The News Camera. The camera was on inside the media relations room. A wooden podium with a handful of microphones adorned the top, and behind it was a city crest with 2 American flags on each side. A man in a suit and tie that was neatly pressed and wearing a confident expression took the stage. "Hello, everyone. My name's Mayor Palmieri. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to say how truly grateful we all are to our fine men and women in law enforcement. Now, I'm going to turn it over to Police Chief Smith." Mayor Palmieri stepped to one side as Chief Smith made his way up to the podium. "Oh, thank you all for being here. I'll just get started. 2 SBPD officers who responded to a 911 call were ambushed and attacked by a group of individuals. During the struggle, the officers were able to call for backup shortly after shots were fired from one or both of the officers. Additionally, officers responded from all over the area, including the Bear Creek County Sheriff Department, Highway Patrol, and many other surrounding agencies. Both officers were taken to the hospital where they are expected to recover. Well, I'll take your questions now." A reporter off-camera asked, "What was the original call that the officers were responding to?" The police chief replied, "A group of people fighting. Next question." Someone else in the room asked, "What were the officers' injuries?" "Cuts and laceration to the face and arms, along with bruises and a few bites," the police chief said. Another reporter spoke up. "What about the uptick in hospitalization and 911 calls for medical services?" Now the chief looked angry. "That has nothing to do with the topic. Next question." "Are the officers involved in shootings and the protesters downtown linked?" The mayor quickly got up and went to the podium to speak. "As of right now, we do not have any information linking the 2 incidents together. If people want to peacefully protest, they can. We just ask them to respect law and order. Now, no more questions. Static filled the screen for a second and then cut to a clear image of the mayor walking in, looking a little weary but still maintaining a confident stride. Behind him were the police chief and several other city workers. The mayor stepped up to the podium and cleared his throat and began speaking. As of now, I have declared the downtown demonstration to be an unlawful assembly and a riot. In the last 30 minutes or so, I have received numerous reports of individuals and officers being injured, along with property damage, both city and private. The mayor slammed his fist down with a loud thud. This will not be tolerated. Chief Smith and I have decided to call all off-duty police, fire, and emergency medical technicians in for immediate assignment. I did speak to the governor. We're activating a small contingency of the National Guard. They'll be here within the hour. They'll be taking a hands-off approach to the situation. Now, rest assured, we will get this issue under control. No questions. The group walked off the stage with reporters yelling a fury of questions in hopes that the mayor would stop and answer one. The camera returned to static and then cut a moment later to an image of a soldier in a digital army combat uniform. The rank of lieutenant colonel was behind the podium. His name tag said Dewey. His uniform was crisp and his haircut was high and tight. He gave the impression of, "Do not worry, Big Army is here to save everyone." Behind him was the mayor, along with some of his staff. The mayor looked tired. Dark circles started to form below his eyes, and his hair looked like it was graying due to stress. The army officer said, "As the mayor said, we'll be in a non-combative role. We're just here for logistical support to keep the civil government functioning as best as we can. I'll take questions now." One reporter in the back asked, "Will your men and women be armed?" Lieutenant Colonel Dewey replied, "My men were out in the field on a training exercise and were armed with their normal weapons once we entered the city. But before taking our places, we handed over our weapons to the local National Guard armory for storage. If the time comes that they need to be armed, the rules of engagement is not to fire unless fired upon first. Right, next question." Someone near the podium inquired, "What exactly is the Guard doing to help?" Dewey answered, "Good question. We will help in the support of the civilian operation and evacuation." That last part caused a lot of the reporters to start mumbling. One person yelled, "What do you mean, evacuation?" Even the mayor looked confused. Dewey shouted out, "All right, everyone calm down. We're just trying to evacuate people who've been caught up in the violence, or if we suspect the violence downtown, we'll be moving to other parts of the city. If that's the case, we'll be knocking on doors to let residents know." The mayor's assistant ran into the room and whispered something to the mayor. And the mayor yelled, "What?" to his assistant, and she just nodded her head yes. The room went silent. The mayor went up to the podium and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I just received information that the Cook Bridge has collapsed. No questions at this time." Everyone left the room in complete silence. The screen filled with static and cut to an outside shot of the city hall. The camera was sitting on the stone steps, and two people from the waist down could be seen. One of the two said, "Hey man, can I bum a cigarette off you?" The other person replied, "Yeah, sure." Behind them, the image was out of focus, but we could easily distinguish a dozen or so military vehicles driving around. Tiny figures could be seen running around, setting up tents. The sound of heavy equipment backing up could be heard. In the distance, someone was barking out orders to a group of soldiers. This went on for a while as the two people enjoyed their cigarettes, unaware that the camera was on. A third pair of legs showed up in dark blue tactical pants. "You guys know the rules. No smoking within 1,000 feet of City Hall." One of the men retorted, "Really, Paul? With all the shit going on today? Why aren't you out there dealing with a riot?" Paul tapped his leg. "Bum knee. I'm just doing it to look busy. Honestly, the way shit's coming down in the city, the last thing I care about is a few news reporters smoking by City Hall." Loud metal clanking against metal stopped the conversation of the three men short. "Hey, Troy," one of the men said. "Get a shot of that, will you?" Troy picked up the camera and swung it around just in time to see a soldier on top of a Humvee put a belt of ammunition into the crew-served weapon and pull the charging handle on the side 3 times. A small black object fell away from the weapon on the opposite side of where the ammunition was being fed into. Cameraman Troy said, "They're just testing it, right? Like a show of force." The camera swung back around to the police officer named Paul, who looked scared. He shook his head and said, "I served 10 years with the Guard. Those boys look like they're digging in for a mother of a fight." The camera swung back around, showing people in ACU camo running around and unloading wooden boxes full of ammo. Others filled sandbags, while another group set up fences and razor wire. On the main avenue, tow trucks were moving cars, and police officers were setting up roadblocks on all the side streets. It looked like someone had kicked in an anthill the way that everyone was running around on the edge of panic. And all the while, sergeants were barking out orders. The camera turned back to see Officer Paul take a long drag on a cigarette, clearly not caring about smoking within 1,000 feet of City Hall. Paul said, "They're clearing the main avenue and turning it into a kill box. Those 50 cals mounted on the Humvees, oh, you don't put firepower like that just anywhere. The main approach corridor has fences going up on the side. That's to keep any unwanted people from flanking the rear." Paul dropped his cigarette and ground it out with his shoe. "Yeah, right. Evacuate my left nut. They're gearing up and this place is the Alamo." Someone opened the main doors to City Hall and said, "You two coming? They're doing an emergency military briefing." The camera cut to the media room where Lieutenant Colonel Dewey was standing behind the podium next to the mayor, the chief of police, and a few other City Hall staff members. Lieutenant Colonel Dewey started to speak. "State of emergency has been declared for the city of Sunburst and is effective immediately. The city is under martial law. Curfew from 8 p.m. tonight until 8 a.m. will be enforced. Anyone who's caught outside during these times will be arrested and detained without counsel. Looters will be prosecuted with deadly force. All reserve military personnel, the National Guard, along with anyone who was discharged from the military within the last 6 months, or any active military personnel on leave inside the city, required to report to City Hall or to the National Guard Armory for deployment. Telephone networks, including landlines, are to be used for rescue efforts only. With that being said, rescue efforts are being made to help the civilian population. We will come for you and bring you to City Hall where it's safe. You'll be allowed 1 personal bag when the time comes for evacuation. Bring ownership records of your property, but do not attempt to defend said property. You can only be evacuated after a full medical exam. No questions." Lieutenant Colonel Dewey then walked out of the room. The reporters went crazy, yelling questions, while a few just yelled obscenities at the lieutenant colonel. The screen went to static for a moment and cut back to the mayor. His suit was now wrinkled and covered in sweat stains. His tie was missing and he looked like he was on the verge of collapse. The news reporters were shouting questions at him. "What's going on? Evacuate from what and to where? Why are the cell phones not working? We're getting reports of the military shooting unarmed civilians. Is this true?" The mayor spoke up. "Quiet down, everyone. I understand you have a lot of questions. Dr. McCall, head of our public health department, will fill you in." A blonde female with her hair up in an efficient ponytail and wearing a white lab coat calmly walked up to the podium. She was looking down, clearly ready to read from a script. "Hello, members of the press. My name's Dr. McCall. I'm the head of the public health department for the city of Sunburst. I've been in contact with several local hospitals as well as the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Our analysis is that..." Dr. McCall paused. "Our analysis is..." There was a longer pause, followed by the shuffling of note cards. The mayor, who was standing off to the side, said, "Doctor, just read the notes in front of you." McCall gripped the sides of the podium, her knuckles turning white and her left eye began to twitch. She took one deep breath as she grabbed the note cards and threw them in the mayor's face. "No, Jim. I'm done with this shit. These people have the right to know what the fuck is going on. No more lies, no more cover-ups. This thing has spread too big and too far. ladies and gentlemen of the press. The mayor began to yell. I'll have you arrested for instigating panic. McCall quipped back. Then arrest me. She turned back to the cameras and continued. Now, for reasons yet to be determined. The mayor jumped in front, trying to physically stop her. A small struggle ensued until a police officer ran up and separated the two. The mayor shouted, We are under martial law. I'll have you shot. The mayor lunged for the officer's pistol. The two went to the ground, fighting for control of the weapon. 3 news reporters ran up and helped subdue the mayor until the officer could get handcuffs on him. The room went silent as the ratcheting sound of handcuffs could be heard. Someone brought the doctor a glass of water, and as she drank it, she had a 1,000-yard stare on her face. Someone from the back of the room softly said, Please, doctor, go on. McCall cleared her throat and said, For reasons yet to be determined by medical sciences, the bodies of the recently deceased are returned to life and attacking the living. The scope of this epidemic has reached its tipping point as over half the population has succumbed to this disease. With the phone lines down or taken over for military use, it's impossible to know if this has spread across the Cook River into the surrounding cities. We do not know if the original disease is a virus, a bacteria, parasite, or whatever. We do know the people that the undead kill get up and kill, and then those people get up and kill. Right. Any questions? The room was silent for a moment as the cameraman moved his camera around. Every reporter had their mouth open, stunned by the news they'd just heard. Someone near the stage slowly raised their hand like a kid in school who wanted to ask a question but was too scared to do so. Is there, any way to stop them? Dr. McCall answered. Blunt force trauma to the head, particularly around the prefrontal cortex, frontal lobe, or somatosensory cortex. Although these things are dead, we speculate parts of their cerebellum, brainstem, and motor cortex are still active but very fragile. There was yelling coming from off-camera. Stay back, right there. We could hear the sound of a door opening and gunshots ringing out. The camera that was on the tripod fell over. The officer who'd arrested the mayor ran over behind the camera and said, Get off of him. The sound of flesh and skin tearing was followed by, Damn it, he bit me. The camera was picked up as a gunshot rang out. One police officer was on the ground with a dead body on top of her. The other officer's hand was bleeding badly. 3 more zombies dressed in suits and ties shambled in and began to attack the reporters in the room. The cameraman ran away. Just then, 4 heavily armed police officers rushed in from a different door. The team of officers was led by the chief himself. They started shooting into the group of reporters as one of the officers grabbed the mayor, running out of the room. The cameraman took off running down a hallway and out of the door. He ran down the steps and into a big tent where a bunch of military personnel had equipment. Someone shouted, Sir, you might want to see this drone footage from the front line. Lieutenant Colonel Dewey walked up, putting his hand on the shoulder of the drone pilot. What am I looking at, son? We are looking at zombies in division strength, maybe 10 or 20,000. They're stretching back from here to almost downtown. Well, my dear friends, there you go, another hour of the story, and if all goes to plan, maybe not next Sunday, but the Sunday after that, I am going to do the whole story, going to finish everything off. And to be honest, I can't wait. This is one of the favorite things I've ever done on the channel, and I know a lot of you are really, really enjoying this, so next time, you're going to get the full story. But I hope you enjoyed tonight's episode as well, and I know you like it when I just add the new bits onto the end rather than doing separate standalone efforts, so yeah, I don't know what to say about that. Okay, so next time we have this, it will be the complete story. And it is definitely worth waiting for, I can tell you. That's enough for this evening, though. Back again during the week with lots of good stuff. The Robert Cassidy serial killer universe. I'm going to be doing a big video where I put lots of the episodes together in anticipation of more brand new stuff coming along to expand that universe even more. That's definitely worth listening to, so join me for that as well. And a few other stuff, other things coming as well. Well, that's enough for one evening. Till the next time, my dear friends. Very, very sweet dreams, and bye-bye. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this story today. Really means a lot to me and to the author of the story, of course. Well, if you want to know more about me, I'm pretty much everywhere on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can download my music on SoundCloud. I've got a Patreon if you feel like. Throw me $1 or $2. Very much appreciated. And of course, on Reddit, I have a place where you can leave stories if you want me to read one that you've written. Well, hoping to see you all again very soon. Till then, sweet dreams. Bye-bye.